Chapter 1483. Chen Zhao woke up 3 days later. Chen Zhao still remembered the punch clearly. The first thing Old Turtle said after Chen Zhao woke up was, "Did you see my punch clearly?" But Chen Zhao still felt that Old Turtle had only fought him to hit him. Only a ghost could see that punch clearly. Apart from being stronger than him, what else could it be? Chen Zhao was silent for a while. The scene before he fainted flashed through his mind. After a while, Chen Zhao looked at Old Turtle. "I'm sure you only did it to hit me." "No, you didn't realize the secret." "What secret?" "You have to realize it yourself." "I still think you did it to hit me." "Actually, part of the reason is to train your resistance," Old Turtle said. Old Turtle said, "Normal missiles can't hurt you anymore. It's time for me to take the field." That was what he said. But he'd heavily injured himself the first time. Then he'd fainted for 3 days. Wasn't that too much? Chen Zhao might be very strong in a normal world. But against Old Turtle, Chen Zhao wouldn't even be able to block 1,000th or 10,000th of Old Turtle's power. This was a difference in quality. How long had Chen Zhao been cultivating? Less than 2 years. But Old Turtle had been cultivating for thousands of years. Moreover, after reaching a certain level, one's level would increase slower and slower, but their power would increase faster and faster. For example, Chen Zhao and Gaia. In the past, Gaia could beat Chen Zhao up. Now Chen Zhao could completely beat Gaia. Because Chen Zhao was getting stronger and stronger, and he was improving faster and faster. Now, Old Turtle might not do anything for 1 day, and his power would increase more than Chen Zhao's 10 years of cultivation. It was like a rich man who had $10 billion in the bank. Even if he did nothing, 1 day's interest was more than a normal person's lifetime's worth of hard work. Before Old Turtle, Chen Zhao was that poor man. Old Turtle was very passionate about beating people up. In the past, he'd never trained Chen Zhao like this. That was because Chen Zhao had been too weak in his eyes. But now he felt that the time was right. Chen Zhao was already strong enough. He could take 1 punch. Return to 1? Couldn't take 1 punch. Dark assimilation? Couldn't take 1 punch. 2 added together? He still couldn't block a single punch. Chen Zhao did everything he could, but he still couldn't escape the fate of being knocked out. Chen Zhao tried to stop the punch with the shadow of his fist. But the result was the same. As the old saying goes, in the face of absolute power, all struggles seem so futile and laughable. Before the Old Turtle, Chen Zhao's power was indeed a joke. 3 days, 3 days, 3 days in a coma. Every time Chen Zhao recovered, he would receive 1 punch from Old Turtle. He wondered if Old Turtle had gone easy on him. After fainting a dozen times, Old Turtle told him that he had only been unconscious for a little more than 2 days this time. Chen Zhao suspected that Old Turtle had gone easy on him. Not that he had improved. Old Turtle was only afraid that he wouldn't want to play anymore. So he went easy on him. But after 20 times, he realized that he'd actually blocked Old Turtle's first punch. Although he was heavily injured, he did not lose consciousness. "Old Turtle, what level do I need to reach?" "Train until you can block at least 3 of my punches, and you're still standing." It wasn't easy. Only when he faced the Old Turtle's fist could he feel the pressure of a landslide. "Are you an idiot? What kind of trash spell did you use this time? You gave up what you're best at, and tried to use magic to stop me?" Chen Zhao had just used the spell he'd found in the Black Dragon's soul fragment, Shadow Fortress. But just as Old Turtle had scolded, this was indeed a stupid choice. Fine, this was just Chen Zhao's first attempt. After trying, Chen Zhao confirmed that he was indeed not suitable for this kind of external spell. He also knew a few spells, but they were all support-type spells. He barely had any offensive spells. Old Turtle always said that he didn't have talent in this area. But Chen Zhao still tried to prove that Old Turtle was right. Pure physical attacks were indeed more suitable for him. Old Turtle's test for Chen Zhao was more like a one-sided beating than training. This training took longer than Chen Zhao's previous training with the 1,000 swords. He hadn't even finished it when he left the river map. He had to come back the next night to receive Old Turtle's cruel training. Although the process of being beaten was very painful. But Chen Zhao really felt that he had become stronger. Maybe to the outside world, it was only 2 nights. But it wasn't the same for Chen Zhao. It was 3 years. Of course, even so, Chen Zhao still couldn't block 3 punches. One punch could even heavily injure him. He could only block the second punch with his body. The third punch would definitely make him lose consciousness. This kind of training was too long and painful. No, you have to maintain your defense after the first punch. If all your defenses are destroyed by the first punch, you definitely won't be able to block the second and third punches. That was true. But how could he block the first punch without all his defenses collapsing? This was a huge problem. This training method couldn't activate the Golden Key's power of evolution. Chen Zhao couldn't rely on evolution to obtain everything. If he wanted to block Old Turtle's first punch, he had to block the first punch first. Also, he had to be on full defense. He couldn't be destroyed. If he couldn't block the first punch, all his defenses would collapse. Then he would have to face Old Turtle's second punch. With his body, taking Old Turtle's second punch directly would cause his body to collapse. The third punch would be a fatal one. Here came the first punch. Old Turtle's punches weren't fast. It wasn't that he couldn't move fast. He just wanted to give Chen Zhao time to react. Of course, Chen Zhao could dodge, but then the training would be meaningless. Chen Zhao's brain started working quickly. Suddenly, Chen Zhao thought of a possibility. The dark lava didn't stick to Chen Zhao this time. He didn't go through dark assimilation. Instead, the dark lava formed a wall, an extremely sturdy wall. It wasn't like a wall made of mud. It was more like a wall made of bricks. Chen Zhao pressed his palms against the wall. The dark lava became extremely sturdy. Chen Zhao had never used it like this before. Even though he'd used it for defense before, he'd never used it to create such an indestructible wall. Bang! Old Turtle's first punch landed on the wall. The dark lava split into pieces. Chen Zhao flew out. Old Turtle looked at Chen Zhao on the ground. Not bad. You've developed a new fighting style. But it's not in our training list. Chapter 1484. Old Turtle wanted Chen Zhao to train his own defense, not other defensive techniques. So this time, Old Turtle knocked Chen Zhao down with one punch. This time, Chen Zhao was unconscious for more than 10 days. He had to continue training. Chen Zhao still couldn't block Old Turtle's 3 punches. Chen Zhao's body was also changing. At first, the feeling was very vague. But as he was beaten more and more, the feeling grew stronger. It seemed like the Golden Key's ability was working again. But it didn't seem like it. Chen Zhao didn't know if this change came from the Golden Key's evolution. Hey, your resistance seems to be increasing. You seem different. Old Turtle noticed it too. But Chen Zhao still couldn't find what the change was. His body structure was still the same. His organs were still the same. He was no different from a normal person. Chen Zhao clearly felt the change. But he couldn't find what it was. Chen Zhao suddenly thought of a possibility. If his body structure and strangeness didn't change, then he definitely couldn't see what had changed. What couldn't he see in his body? Now that Chen Zhao could look inside, he could see almost all the mysteries of his body. Of course, it wasn't absolute. There were still some things that Chen Zhao couldn't see. Those were the cells. Chen Zhao could look inside, but he couldn't see at a glance. In other words, it was most likely that his cells had changed. This made Chen Zhao suspect if the evolution was due to the Golden Key's influence. Because every time the Golden Key caused Chen Zhao to evolve, he had a very clear feeling. But this time it was very vague. It went from a very small feeling to a more intense change in his body. If it wasn't due to the Golden Key's ability, what else could it be? The Undead Key? The Undead Key's ability wasn't evolution. Instead, it could absorb enemy soul fragments. More accurately, it could absorb enemy soul fragments of a similar nature. Chen Zhao's heart jumped. No, the Undead Key's ability wasn't to absorb soul fragments. It was to make up for it. Like 2 pieces of a puzzle, the Undead Key could absorb enemy soul fragments of a similar nature to make up for its own flaws or inadequacies. Maybe the Black Dragon's soul fragment had changed him somehow? Was it just an increase in resistance? In reality, Chen Zhao was unconscious right now. Chen Zhao was knocked out by Old Turtle again. But now he could stay conscious. Chen Zhao only discovered this when he fainted. Perhaps it was subconscious now. However, Chen Zhao could clearly sense the concept of me. If it was just a dream, there would be no concept of I. Chen Zhao didn't understand what was going on either. Perhaps this was the awakening of the self. Chen Zhao could still sense the unconscious little world. Chen Zhao had an idea. What if he consciously used magic to speed up the healing process? Chen Zhao had fainted because Old Turtle had punched him in the chest. All the ribs in his chest were broken. At the same time, the huge impact also caused his brain to temporarily freeze. It worked. Chen Zhao could feel his body recovering faster. Old Turtle glanced at the unconscious Chen Zhao on the ground. He seemed to have figured something out. Has your sea of consciousness awakened? You've improved more than I thought. Chen Zhao didn't hear Old Turtle's mutterings. However, he discovered a problem. The source of magic power in his body disappeared. That's right, it disappeared. But his magic power was still there. The magic power he used to heal his injuries just now came from every corner of his body. Every spiritualist had a source of magic power. Chen Zhao was no exception. But now, Chen Zhao realized that his source of magic power had disappeared. He panicked and didn't know what to do. Suddenly, Chen Zhao realized that the disappearance of his magic power had something to do with the changes in his body. According to his guess, the changes came from his cells. Then could the disappearance of his magic power be due to the changes in his cells? To confirm his guess, Chen Zhao tried again. As expected, every time he used magic power, it would surge from every part of his body and every corner. But after a closer inspection, he couldn't find any source of magic power. Had his cells become a magic power storage source? The little world was sending magic power into his body and then charging every cell. Chen Zhao suddenly opened his eyes. Seeing that Chen Zhao had woken up, Old Turtle was a bit surprised. So fast this time? How long was I out? 13 hours. My body seems to have changed. Chen Zhao looked at his hands. I can tell. It's similar to how Western dragons accumulate magic. You're saying that I'm accumulating magic like dragons do? Yes, every cell is filled with magic power. Don't dragons have magic power too? Don't they have Dragon Balls? Dragon Balls aren't their magic power source. They're their lives. Is my change obvious? No, it's not. You're like the Taoists' return to simplicity. If I wasn't so much stronger than you, I probably wouldn't be able to see the change. Looking at his arms, Chen Zhao felt that he was filled with power. Will I become a dragon? You're changing your way of accumulating magic power, not your genes becoming a dragon. I know the reason, but I don't know what the trigger is. Is it because of your beating? It's partly because of the beating, but I think this should be a normal evolutionary trend. It's like the survival of the fittest in nature. The better way of accumulating magic power will eliminate the outdated way. From a certain perspective, this is also evolution. But I don't feel that my magic power has increased. Evolution isn't just about growth. It's more practical and effective use, Old Turtle said. Old Turtle said, a cell's lifespan can range from a few days to a few months. A cell full of magic will greatly increase the lifespan of the cell. The rate of cell renewal will decrease, which means your lifespan will greatly increase. Just from this alone, you've already benefited. You've obtained a way to extend your lifespan in the most fundamental way, and there are no side effects. Old Turtle said. Old Turtle paused and then said, also, filling your cells with magic power will increase your physical attributes by leaps and bounds. Do you want to try? Chen Zhao hesitated and looked at Old Turtle. It's easy. Don't worry. I'll be really gentle. You won't feel pain. Old Turtle tapped lightly. Instantly, Chen Zhao lost control of his body and his head sank. Before he fainted, Chen Zhao only had one thought: curse. Chapter 1485. Chen Zhao fell down again. However, he felt that he didn't faint for long this time. Chen Zhao opened his eyes abruptly. Old Turtle, you're cheating. This isn't training, Chen Zhao complained. If he'd really wanted to kill Chen Zhao with that attack, he would have died long ago. However, Old Turtle's attack had clearly exceeded the standard. Human or other species, they all need stimulation to activate their potential. Your cells are full of energy right now and are extremely active. If you want to progress in the next stage, you need to stimulate your cells. With that, Old Turtle kicked Chen Zhao's butt. You can leave now. Chen Zhao was kicked out of the river map, but the air outside felt completely different from the inside. In the river map, Old Turtle was too powerful. The spiritual qi that Chen Zhao absorbed was actually emitted from Old Turtle. Chen Zhao was like a big boss, while Chen Zhao was a small employee. But it was different in the outside world. The spiritual qi didn't belong to anyone. It was like natural resources. Every cell in Chen Zhao's body was greedily devouring the spiritual qi in the air. The small world was also operating at the fastest speed, turning the spiritual qi into magic and sending it to Chen Zhao's body and cells. Chen, it's the middle of the night. Are you trying to scare me by standing there? Fei Lai opened her eyes at some point and looked at Chen Zhao, who was standing in front of the balcony. As soon as Chen Zhao turned around, he felt his body lighten and float up. It felt out of control. Chen Zhao crawled in the air on all fours. It looked like he was dog paddling. Chen, it's so late. Are you acting funny? Fei Lai, nothing. I'm cultivating. You're practicing dog paddling swimming. Actually, dog paddling swimming is a special cultivation method, Chen Zhao said, chuckling. At the same time, he waved his hands in the air, making himself float. I'm ignoring you. I'm going to sleep. Fei Lai pulled up the blanket. Chen Zhao was quite depressed too. It was fine when he had the source of magic. Now that he didn't have the source, the magic spread throughout his body. It became difficult to control his body's gravity. He couldn't absorb anymore. He couldn't oversaturate his cells. If he did, he wouldn't even be able to touch the ground. After thinking for a while, he decided to use half of the magic power in his body. Chen Zhao's mana had been around 80%. After using half of it, there was only 40% left. When Chen Zhao landed on the ground, he didn't feel like he was floating. Chen Zhao tried a few more times. If his magic power exceeded 60%, he would fly. However, as long as his mana did not increase, he could stabilize himself on the ground. If there was a battle, and he needed to go all out, it would take about 15 minutes for his magic power to recover to 100%. Seems like I also need to practice flying and landing. It wasn't very comfortable to keep his body at 40% magic power. Humans instinctively want their bodies to be in peak condition. It was like a person who ate 40% full. He would definitely not like it. However, Chen Zhao's current state also confirmed his previous guess. When magic power reached a certain level, and the mass of the body was lower than that of air, the human body would be able to break free from gravity. Because Chen Zhao's magic had become so powerful, he could now break free from gravity. Unlike before when he used the small world to fly, he now truly had the ability to fly. He was no longer restricted by the small world, and couldn't go higher than 100 meters. However, Chen Zhao tried many times in one night, but he couldn't control it. He probably hadn't mastered the tricks of flying and landing. Chen Zhao flew 10,000 meters in the air at his highest point. He wasn't afraid of being discovered by the radar. The radar could only detect metal or heat now. It couldn't detect if a person was flying in the sky, unless the person was large enough. The feeling of flying in the sky was very magical. It was a feeling that he had never felt before. Chen Zhao had skydived before. However, that feeling was completely different from the feeling when he flew up. But he didn't stay for long. Then he reduced his magic power and landed. Northern Europe, Hungary. This was the origin of witches. In the Middle Ages, this was also the place where witches were hunted and persecuted the most. Of course, in modern times, witches started to unite again. And the most famous witch in Hungary should be Bloody Mary. There were many legends about Bloody Mary. Some said she was a vampire, while others said she was a witch. Actually, many spiritualists knew Bloody Mary's background. She came from the Scarlet Church, a mysterious and powerful religious organization. Every leader of the Scarlet Church was called Bloody Mary. The legendary 12th generation Bloody Mary wasn't famous because of her power. It was because of her noble identity and cruel methods. The Scarlet Church's origin came from Lilith, the witch. The first Bloody Mary was Lilith's servant, so every leader after that was called Bloody Mary. The Scarlet Church worshipped blood, and believed that magic came from it. But they weren't a cult, and they didn't pursue cruel and evil magic. The legendary Bloody Mary didn't represent the Scarlet Church. In the Nordic spiritual world, every generation of Bloody Mary had a very high status. If there was any big trouble in the spiritual world, the Scarlet Church would help too. Especially in modern times, The Scarlet Church had been using kindness and justice to wash away the stain caused by the 12th generation Bloody Mary. Actually, they were a group of smart women. They knew that they couldn't survive in this era through violence and evil. Ploton Castle was the headquarters of the Scarlet Church. Now the 23rd generation Bloody Mary was in power. In fact, other than the 23rd generation, there were also the 24th and 25th generation Bloody Mary, although the last two generations inherited the title of Bloody Mary, because the previous generation hadn't died yet. The 24th and 25th generation Bloody Mary had no power. Today, there were more than 30 guests in the Ploton Castle. They were all invited by the 23rd generation Bloody Mary. They came from all over the world, including many famous people in the spiritual world. The 23rd generation Bloody Mary walked out of the castle slowly to welcome the invited guests. Thank you for coming, everyone. Your presence brings light to the Scarlet Church. The 23rd generation Bloody Mary nodded slightly to express her etiquette. She was too old. After witnessing World War I and World War II, she was about to rot. I believe everyone already knows why I invited you here, right? 767E, 5EA6, 641C, 7D22 3010, 4E91, 6765, 9601, 3011, 5C0F, 8BF4, 7F51, 7AD9, FF0C, 8BA9, for F60, for F53, 9A8C, 66F4, 65B0, 6700, 65B0, 6700, 5 February, 7684, 7AE0, 8282, 5C0F, 8BF4, FF0C, 6240, 6709, 5C0F, 8BF4, 79D2, 66F4, 65B0, 3002. Chapter 1486. These 30 or so guests were all spiritualists from various countries, regardless of their status and reputation in their country or internationally. Facing the 23rd generation Blood Mary, who could almost be called a living fossil, they had to show enough respect. And they were all invited by Blood Mary of the 23rd generation. Many of them had dealings with the 23rd Blood Mary, or the Scarlet Church. I'm about to decay. The 23rd generation Blood Mary threw out a bomb as soon as she opened her mouth. Everyone's jaws dropped as they looked at the 23rd generation Blood Mary in shock. However, he also felt that it was only natural. After all, he could be said to be the oldest person in the world, and he was already 140 years old. She has lived through 3 centuries, from the end of the 19th to the 20th, and now the 21st. She had seen so much war and destruction. At the same time, she was the most powerful woman in the world. According to the tradition of the Scarlet Church, I will pass my power to the next generation, the 24th Blood Mary. However, my power is too great. Even if the 24th and 25th generations accept my power, they can only receive 1% of my power. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Not to mention the fact that she was an underage 25th generation Blood Mary. The 24th Blood Mary had already made a name for herself in the spiritual world. She was known as the best successor of the 23rd generation, and it was not an exaggeration to say that she was the most powerful witch of the younger generation. 24th generation Blood Mary could already be compared to some 70 or 80-year-old fellows. But even such an outstanding 24th generation Blood Mary could only receive 1% of the power of the 23rd generation Blood Mary. Based on their understanding of the Scarlet Church, the more powerful the inheritance was, the more mana it could receive. Not a bit more, not a bit less. But such a powerful and outstanding 24th generation was only 1% of the 23rd generation. Just how powerful was the 23rd Blood Mary? I don't know if my soul will return to Lilith's embrace or fall into hell after I die. After I die, my remaining power will dissipate, but I hope to leave something in this world as a mark of my existence. The 23rd generation Blood Mary said, "That's why I asked you to come here. Please help me convey my will. Madam Blood Mary, please instruct me. I will divide my remaining power into 98 portions." 23rd generation Blood Mary said, 8 from China, 8 from Europe, 3 from Japan, 1 from North America. Excuse me, Madam Blood Mary, do you have any basis for this distribution method? Or is it just your personal preference? The person who asked the question was a guest from North America. He was unhappy that the North American region had only been awarded 1. I made my assessment based on the strength of each country or region in the supernatural world. China is a superpower in the supernatural world and is the country and region with the strongest supernatural powers in the world. I believe that no one has any objections. Europe is my hometown and is also the second largest supernatural region in the world, so it is equal to China. The other regions are relatively weaker, so there is no benefit in dividing too much. I think the supernatural forces in these 2 areas are already strong enough. They don't need to share so much, the representative from North America said. On the contrary, I think Madam Blood Mary should consider supporting the relatively weaker regions and countries, such as North America. Each of these 98 portions of power represents a responsibility. They are not given for free. For example, I will make 3 requests for Japan. The first request is to reseal the killing stone that is about to be unsealed. The second request is to solve the riddle of Calamity Village. The third request is to kill the 100 ghost kings that are dormant in the Nagao Shrine. Whoever can fulfill one of these 3 requests will get a portion of power. I don't restrict the spiritualists from other countries or regions from completing the task. If your country or region doesn't get a portion of power, you can go to another country or region. If you can complete the request before the spiritualists in your country, you can come to me and get a portion of power. Blood Mary looked at the representative from North America and said, the mission from North America is to find and destroy the ghost ship Turin. Is there a mission of the same difficulty in North America? If there is, I don't mind giving 1 more to North America. The representative from North America broke out in a cold sweat. Find and destroy the ghost ship Turin. Turin was the legendary ghost ship that had dominated the Pacific Ocean for more than 300 years. Originally, Turin was a trading ship that escorted black slaves. However, during the last escort of the Turin, they sent the wrong passenger to the Turin. The greatest wizard of that era on the African continent launched a terrible attack midway and sank into the depths of the Pacific Ocean with Turin. When Turin reappeared, it became a synonym for disaster. The route that Turin used to take had become the route of death. That route used to be the most prosperous trade route. However, when Turin reappeared, no ship dared to take that route anymore. The ships that dared to take that route never reached their destination, even in modern times. The government and the supernatural organizations had tried to settle accounts with Turin and destroy this terrible ghost ship. However, Turin still wandered on that route of death, and the team that went to destroy it never returned to shore. The representative from North America thought that Blood Mary must be biased against the supernatural world in North America. She was deliberately making things difficult for them. It was impossible to destroy the Turin. Of course, people from other regions didn't think so. For example, the representative from Japan said, Ms. Blood Mary, you're too generous to the supernatural world in North America. Our mission is so difficult. But why is the mission in North America so easy? Although the supernatural world in North America is indeed weak, it's not to the extent of asking us to complete a legendary mission. You're only asking the supernatural world in North America to complete this kind of cleansing mission. If you think that the mission in any region is easy, you can go there. Although I assign the mission to each country, I don't restrict people of different nationalities to complete the mission. Blood Mary said, Okay, I've finished. Come down and let Blood Mary tell you the details. I'm tired, so I won't disturb you young people anymore. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1487. Hi Miss Wire. You're still so beautiful. Ruan Faxben walked into the magic shop with a proud expression. Seeing Ruan Faxben walk in, Wire and Mephisto's expressions darkened. That day, Ruan Faxben and Chen Zhao had fought in the shop and damaged a lot of goods and merchandise. Ruan, you still dare to come here? Do you want to die? Mephisto wasn't polite at all. She was already about to attack. Perhaps she didn't dare to kill here. But she dared to beat Ruan Faxben up until he couldn't take care of himself. Please praise my guild leader for allowing me to appear here. This is a check for you as compensation. Also pray in your heart and thank my guild leader for his kindness to you. Ruan Faxben's exaggerated posture and frivolous tone made him sound like a fanatic. It really made people wonder if he was sick in the head. Is he the Asian who beat you into a pig's head? Wire curled her lips. Ruan Faxben had never been a believer. Alchemists were never religious. Plus, Ruan was his enemy. Wire didn't believe that Ruan Faxben would become Chen Zhao's believer in just a few days. Of course, Ruan Faxben didn't really become Chen Zhao's believer. He was just shocked by Chen Zhao's generosity. 3 dragons. 3 real dragons. To an alchemist like Ruan Faxben, there were 3 huge mountains of treasures. Ruan Faxben could do anything he could think of to raise money for experiments and research. Ruan Faxi could have done anything he could think of to raise money for experiments in alchemy. Using dragon scales to make equipment, dragon horns to make weapons, and dragon eyes to make magic tools. Using dragon scales to create equipment, dragon horns to create weapons, and dragon eyes to create magic tools. Using dragon scales to make equipment, dragon horns to make weapons, and dragon eyes to make magic tools. Not just for Ruan Faxben, but for any alchemist in the world. It was too extravagant. After seeing the check, Mephisto's expression finally improved. Why are you here? To give you a check, of course. Isn't that enough? Ruan Faxben said. Actually, he really wanted to keep the check for himself. But if he did that, Chen Zhao would stuff him into the dragon's *****. Moreover, he wasn't joking. He would really do it. From the first day he joined the supernatural organization, he received the first rule, and a warning at the same time. Don't disobey their president Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao had a bad temper. If there's nothing else, get out of my shop. Mephistos didn't like Ruan Faxben, even though the latter had just compensated him with a huge sum of money. Let's not talk about how bad Ruan Faxi's reputation was. Just thinking about the trouble he had brought to the magic shop last time made Mephistos furious at Ruan Faxben. Of course there is. I want to buy some magic materials. Because Wester wanted him to make a large batch of alchemy products with dragon materials as the main raw materials, he still needed some other magic materials. So many materials? You didn't steal all the money from the supernatural organization, did you? Mephisto had to be suspicious. Ruan Faxben's reputation was too bad. Besides, Ruan Faxi did not have that much money. God, what kind of person do you think I am? How could I steal money? Ruan Faxi was actually tempted when he received the check. But thinking of Chen Zhao, the supernatural organization, and that meat grinder, Ruan Faxi sobered up again. Money was a good thing, but the key was to spend it. That was money. He hadn't even used a high-level material, like a dragon's body, to make a magic tool. How could he die for money? His dream was to create a divine artifact. Now hope was in front of him. He could also have the luxury of failing again and again. Why would he take the risk of using this money when there was such a good thing? Even if he got the money, he would be worried all day. Plus, he had signed the contract. The supernatural organization would find him sooner or later. He might as well stay in the organization. Although his freedom was limited, at least his research and alchemy needs would be satisfied. Oh, be careful. Many spiritualists came to LA. Many of them have conflicts with you. Mephisto, you still love me. You care about me. Ruan Faxi looked at Mephisto with tears in his eyes. Mephistos, you still love me. You care about me. In that instant, Ruan Faxben looked at Mephistos with tears in his eyes. Mephisto's face darkened. Piss off. Okay, I'll stop joking. Why did they come to LA? Did they spread the news that I'm here? Something big happened in the spiritual world. What? Ruan Faxi asked curiously. The 23rd generation Blood Mary of the Scarlet Church is about to reach the end of her life, Mephisto said. The old witch who's lived for 140 years. Ruan asked in surprise. Don't blame him for being mean. The 23rd generation Blood Mary was really too famous. It could be said that there was no one in the spirit world who did not know about it. Ruan Faxi was quite famous, but compared to the 23rd generation Blood Mary, He was really insignificant. However, these words were not so pleasant to Mephisto's ears. She wasn't young anymore, and the word which sounded like it was directed at her. If you keep talking nonsense, I'll tear you to pieces or scram before I do, Mephisto said in an unfriendly tone. Just like in Wuxia novels, spiritualists were the same. Old people, women, and children couldn't be messed with. Especially since Mephisto had two of them. Let's get back to the main topic. The Scarlet Church is old. Blood Mary is dying. It's a big deal. But what does it have to do with the people who came to LA? The Scarlet Church has a legacy that can pass magic to the next generation. It can also be passed to anyone. This legacy doesn't have the side effects of forcefully swallowing it. It can perfectly fuse with one's own magic. The 23rd generation Blood Mary divided her magic into 98 parts. Ruan Faxi's eyes lit up. So LA is the location of the legacy mission? On the route of the Turin ghost ship, Arma Island, 600 kilometers away from Los Angeles, was one of the stops of the Turin ghost ship. Hundreds of years ago, Arma Island was a trading island. However, because of the Turin, all the people on that island died or escaped from Arma Island. That place became the main battlefield to destroy the Turin ghost ship. Chapter 1488. Of course, Ruan Faxi would bring the news back to the supernatural organization. In fact, the organization was the latest to know. West had always been in charge of receiving information from the outside. However, he'd been really busy in the past 2 days. Everyone was busy dealing with the 3 dragon corpses that Chen Zhao had brought back. Nothing was more important than the 3 dragons. There was nothing more precious than a 3-headed dragon. Even money couldn't buy them. How many magical paths were there in the world that were made from a certain part of a dragon? About 1,000. What about the magic tools made from pure-blooded dragon parts? Probably only 1/10 of the total. There were more than 100 of them. Moreover, most of these 100 or so magic tools, made from pure-blooded dragons, were just scraps. But there were still a few that were holy artifacts. However, they didn't have much to do with the word legend. Simply put, they were powerful magic tools. There weren't many holy artifacts in the world, but they weren't few either. They were precious, but if someone was willing to spend a few $billion, they might be able to buy one. But for a regular person, spending a few $billion on a holy artifact might not be as practical as hiring an army. It was also cheaper, of course, for an alchemist to be able to create a holy artifact and have it be passed down for 100 or 1,000 years along with their name. This was the greatest pursuit of an alchemist. After hearing the news, Chen Zhao also rushed to the headquarters. Everyone's here, Chen Zhao said. Let's have a meeting. It was rare for everyone to be present, and even adus participated in this meeting. Chen Zhao's student Lit Grove and Bona were also here. Lit Grove and Bona were the weakest in the organization. Nevertheless, Lit Grove was very motivated and hardworking. West coughed and glanced at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was the one who'd hosted the meeting. West stood up and said, "There are 2 main topics for this meeting. The first is the distribution of dragon parts. First of all, dragon meat. At present, we can confirm that if dragon meat is eaten over a long period of time, it can strengthen one's physique. There are no side effects, and there is no possibility of mutation. Among them, the Lightning Squad's improvement is the most obvious. As a long-term supply of dragon meat, everyone can get a piece of dragon meat for every meal. Does anyone disagree? Or does he have a different opinion?" West scanned the crowd. No one raised their hand. That means everyone passed, right? West said. Secondly, regarding the proposal to mass-produce dragon scale armor, I think that everyone in the association should wear and equip a set of dragon scale armor. According to the tests, it has been confirmed that the skin of 3 types of dragons has extremely strong physical and magical defense. Among them, the silver dragon's skin is extremely resistant to fire, the fire dragon's skin is extremely resistant to ice, and the black dragon's skin is more resistant to fire and darkness. Currently, the amount of dragon skin is very large, so I suggest that everyone should have a set of 3, 1 silver dragon armor, 1 fire dragon armor, and 1 black dragon armor. Any objections? Looks like there are no objections. Wes glanced at everyone. Next is dragon blood. Right now, the only confirmed way to use dragon blood is for Gaia to purify it and fuse it into her own bloodline to increase the purity of her bloodline. Therefore, we should give Gaia a sufficient supply of dragon blood. Any objections? Just then, Ruan Faxi stood up. I have an objection. I have no objections to purifying Gaia's own bloodline, but I hope to preserve enough dragon blood. Dragon blood isn't completely useless. There are many recorded uses, but because the method of use has been lost, we can't use dragon blood for now. But that doesn't mean we can't use it in the future. Based on Gaia's current consumption, she can only purify 100 grams of dragon blood per day. If she uses it alone, she won't even be able to use 1/10 of a dragon's blood in 100 years. I won't waste dragon blood if it's not what I need. Gaia expressed her stance. It was fine as long as it was enough. More was indeed too wasteful. Next is, let me say a few words. Chen Zhao stood up. Only Chen Zhao could casually interrupt someone else. As for the dragon horns, eyes, and balls, you don't have to worry about the quantity. In fact, if you enter the 9th level, you can kill even more dragons. Since I successfully killed one, I can do it again. So, I hope that this time, we'll discuss how to use and distribute them, and not who gets this and who gets that. President, I was just about to talk about that, West said. Okay, continue. The most precious parts of a dragon's body are the dragon horns, dragon eyes, and dragon balls. Therefore, my suggestion is that to use these 3, you need to be able to reach the 3rd floor of the Tower of Trials by yourself. Mr. West, what about Patya and me? Do you think we have the ability to enter the 3rd level? Raz's tone was somewhat dissatisfied. I'll choose the 2 of you. When I think you're qualified, you'll be qualified, Chen Zhao said. Since the president is testing us, I have no objections. Raz was convinced by Chen Zhao. I have no objections either, Patya hurriedly said. She'd always been aloof from worldly affairs. Also, Pamela, do you have any requests regarding the evil spirit group you lead? West looked at Pamela. Because the evil spirit group, including Pamela, couldn't use or enjoy dragon meat, dragon blood, and most magic tools, West had to compensate them. It could also be said that he was accommodating them. After all, an organization had to be fair and just. I need a list to create a magic array for the evil spirit nest. I don't have any other requests. Pamela's reply was short. Then, talk to Alice and report to me if you need anything, West said. Next, let's talk about the second topic. Luong has brought back a piece of news. Luong, explain it. Ruan stood up again and told Chen Zhao what he'd heard outside. Everyone listened attentively. Chen Zhao looked at West. West, you want us to participate in this fight too? Are we going to destroy that Turin ghost ship? To be honest, if it's just one of the 98 portions of 23rd Blood Mary's magic power, it's too unattractive to us. I don't think it's worth mobilizing so many people for only one person to increase her magic power. What I want to say is that I suggest you act individually. Chapter 1489. What do you mean? Everyone looked at West. To be honest, I don't think this mission is worth everyone in the association. West's horizons had expanded long ago. Why not see what was lying in the warehouse behind their house? A mere specter ship, even if it was the famous Turin, was not worth it for them to mobilize all of their forces. To West, this mission issued by the Scarlet Church was a good test for the association members. They felt that they could complete the mission if they had the ability. Those who were interested could also complete the mission. The association wouldn't provide them with support. At least, as long as their lives weren't in danger, the association wouldn't help. West then explained his thoughts. I won't go, Gaia said. The legacy of the Scarlet Church? It's not suitable for me. Hallie shrugged, also refusing. Teacher, I want to go. Lit Grove looked at Chen Zhao. Lit Grove was an awakened, the same type as Gaia. However, Lit Grove's awakened ability wasn't an offensive ability. Weakness detection wasn't weak, but it wasn't strong either. If Chen Zhao had this spell, he'd definitely be invincible. As for Lit Grove's strength, it was still up for debate. Lit Grove was very familiar with weakness detection now. However, there was a limit to it. For example, if he was facing Chen Zhao or an enemy at Chen Zhao's level. When he used his ability to search for Chen Zhao's weakness, Chen Zhao would already slap him against the wall. But he couldn't say that Lit Grove was weak. If he wore his equipment now, he could even fight Jalanash back and forth. Weakness detection could be used on enemies a few levels higher than him. It wasn't omnipotent, but it had a lot of potential. Although Lit Grove said he couldn't pass the first level of the tower, he could already do it with ease. One had to know that this ability of his was a semi-support ability. Then go, Chen Zhao said calmly. But don't be too rash. Staying alive is more important. The association doesn't lack opportunities to improve. Of course, if there's a chance, grab it. To Little Grove, Chen Zhao's words were like words of encouragement. Not only did Lit Grove have to participate, but Bona also had to participate. Jalanash, more, and more it had to participate as well. Giselle also wanted to participate, so Chen Zhao couldn't be biased. In any case, the ability was on the table. Whoever had the ability could go and complete it. Chen Zhao didn't even want to participate, because if he interfered and completed the mission, he would not be able to escape. Who would receive the Scarlet Church's reward then? Giving it to anyone would be unfair to others. Chen Zhao wasn't being arrogant. With his current strength, Spectre ship was nothing to him. He had seen no less than 10 ghost ships in his life. For example, the storm 2 months ago. More than 10 Spectre ships were blown over. If he made a move, no one else would be able to do anything. Be careful. I don't want to give you a pension. This year's expenses are much higher than planned. Hopefully, we'll still have money to go on a vacation at the end of the year, West said. Oh, the inheritance of the Scarlet Church? Mansari's eyes lit up. He now had complete control over the anti-terrorism security department. He even secretly formed a special team. Just like the supernatural organization, it was a team made up of spiritualists. Of course, the team wasn't very strong yet. Mansari acknowledged the new team's strength, but he still didn't think that they could replace the supernatural organization. At least not in a short time. They needed to continue growing. Mansari didn't plan to expose them for now. Lee, tell Westana to lead our new team members and try to complete this mission, Mansari said. Li Mu and Westana were now Mansari's left and right hands. Through training, Westana had mastered the basics of being a secret agent and had a certain level of combat ability. As the person in charge of the secret team, she arranged and managed it. Li Mu had no talent for fighting at all, but she was very good at administrative work. There were many documents that gave Mansari headaches, but Li Mu could help him manage them in an orderly manner. Boss, I've analyzed the Spectre ship and the Spectre ship Turin in this incident. It's not something our secret team can deal with at the moment. No, you don't understand. I hope they can try to complete the mission, not that they have to, Mansari said. Mansari said, a soldier who has never been on the battlefield is never a real soldier. Mansari knew that the secret team wasn't strong enough, but he hoped that the team could carry out some missions and grow. Then, he would grow through the missions. That was his original intention. According to the Supernatural Organization's data analysis, they've completed at least 300 missions in a year, while the Supernatural Organization has less than 30 people, Mansari said. This means that on average, each person has participated in at least 10 missions in a year, and this doesn't include double or team missions. At the same time, their strength has increased by leaps and bounds. How can they have such growth? Mansari sighed. Obviously, it's because their new leader, Chen, believes in training his subordinates through battles. Even he often participates in all kinds of difficult and dangerous missions. As for our secret team, we can only provide funds and nothing else. They don't even have the chance to fight. That's why I hope they won't miss this chance. Boss, what if we use the Supernatural Organization to complete the mission and get the Scarlet Church's reward? Li Mu asked. Apparently, this reward can instantly make a powerful spiritualist, Mansari said. Mansari was dazed. He looked hesitant. They definitely know the inside story, Mansari said. Maybe even more than us. They won't help us complete the mission for no reason. Then we'll pay. If 1 million isn't enough, we'll pay 2 million. Limu adjusted his glasses. I've calculated their annual operating expenses. It's far more than 20 million US dollars. I think based on their current operating budget, they may not be able to last until the end of the year because of lack of funds. Currently, our department's funds are very sufficient, so I think if we can use money to buy a strong person, it might not be a bad choice. Chapter 1490. Delamore, our luck is here, Navot said excitedly. What luck is here? Delamore asked, confused. The Scarlet Church, that powerful and mysterious Nordic sect. Nawat Singh looked at Delamore excitedly and told Delamore the news she had gathered. You're saying that we can fight for the legacy of the 23rd Blood Mary? Yes. But how can we fight for it? Delamore had no confidence in herself at all. She didn't even have any confidence in Nawat's. Nawat Singh's forte was perception magic. It wasn't that she didn't know offensive magic, but compared to her perception magic, it was like a toy gun. But they had to face the ghost ship. That was a very terrifying existence. We can't do it, but Chun-Ki, don't forget. He still owes us a favor. Delamore's heart jumped. Yeah, Chun can definitely do it. To him, the ghost ship is no different from a small boat. But if we get it, how do we split it? Even if it's just one legacy, we can't take it all. If we take it together, there'll probably be leftovers. Navots knew her limits. Then I'll call him. Hey Delamore, what's up? Soon, Chun Zhao understood why Delamore had called. You want that legacy? Yes, Delamore said directly. There was no need to hide anything from Chun Zhao. Rather than beating around the bush, it was better to be straightforward. Chun Zhao was silent for a long time. I'm afraid I can't help you this time. Why? My subordinates are fighting for the legacy too. I can't ruin it for my own people, Chun Zhao said. Just then, Navots took the phone and said, Mr. Chun, there are a total of 98 Scarlet Legacies in this world. I believe that with your ability, as long as you are willing, there will be no problem at all. Am I right? Navots was clearly much smarter than Delamore. Delamore was still a newbie in the spiritual world. Nawat Singh, on the other hand, was a true veteran. To be honest, I think that a bottle of potion can increase your magic power level much more than the Scarlet Legacy. It's also more effective. Chun Zhao didn't have time to go out recently. The value is different, Navot said. How about this? I'll give each of you a bottle of mana potion and a piece of magic dragon scale armor. It's made from the skin of a pure-blooded black dragon. It has extremely strong magic resistance. What do you think of its value? Nawat Singh and Delamore looked at each other. Even a novice like Delamore knew how rare pure-blooded dragons were. Are you sure you can really provide magic dragon scale armor, made from the skin of a pure-blooded black dragon? Yes, Chun Zhao answered. If you want the Scarlet Legacy, I don't have the time, and there are too many competitors. I can't get it just because I'm strong enough, unless I kill all the other competitors. But I won't do that. As for the value of a pure-blooded black dragon skin, I believe I don't need to say more. Black dragon skin doesn't just have strong magic resistance, it also has great physical resistance. As long as you don't get hit by a large caliber sniper rifle, you can even use it as a bulletproof vest. Actually, black dragon skin could also block large caliber sniper rifles. But the destructive power of a sniper rifle wasn't just about penetration. It also had great physical energy. When a bullet hit a person's body, even if the dragon skin blocked the bullet, the physical energy would still be released into the person's body. It was like a person wearing a bulletproof vest and getting hit by a train. To Chun Zhao, he could have as much dragon skin as he wanted. It wasn't even as valuable as the mana potion. But in the outside world, dragon skin was definitely one of the top 10 rare magic materials in the world. Mr. Chun, you've slain a dragon? Navot Singh guessed. She didn't dare to believe it, but thinking of Chun Zhao's power, she felt that it was very possible. There were indeed pure-blooded dragons in the world, but they would only appear once every few decades. And most of the time, it was fleeting, appearing in a certain place for a while. They would leave before the spiritualists could gather and disappear. Even modern military satellites could not detect the movements of the dragon clan. Even if they gathered, it would be very difficult to kill a dragon. Even if they managed to win with numbers, the dragon could just flap its wings and escape. Most people could only watch and sigh. Yes, Chen Zhao answered. I'm quite lucky. I met a dragon. I hope to get 200 kilograms of dragon blood, Navat Singh said. Huh? Why do you want dragon blood? You have dragon blood? Chen Zhao asked. For bathing. Are you crazy? Dragon blood has strong burning properties. Do you want to disfigure yourself? Chen Zhao had tried it with his hands. Even the blood of a silver dragon would burn his skin. Mr. Chen, I have a formula that can dispel the burning properties of dragon blood. As long as there's enough of it, it can also absorb the dragon's resistance. It can even nullify some low-level spells. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. I can give you 400 kilograms of dragon blood, but I want this formula. The effect of the formula overlapped with magic dragon scale armor, but it wasn't as strong. More importantly, magic dragon scale armor couldn't be worn all the time. However, the resistance gained from bathing in dragon blood could be maintained. It was already very valuable to be able to nullify low-level spells. Right now, 80% of spiritualists only knew low-level spells. This meant that Chen Zhao wouldn't lose against 80% of spiritualists. Sure. Navats paused. Mr. Chen, she said. Are you willing to sell the dragon horn? You want to buy it? It wasn't that Chen Zhao looked down on Navats. Navat Singh was obviously not a rich person. Chen Zhao felt that even Daly might not be able to afford it, unless her parents paid. I'd like to ask how much is it? Nawat Singh changed her previous initiative, and asked shyly instead. I think it's better if you don't know. Chen, I have money, Daly said. Daly, are you going to ask your father for money? Or your mother? I don't have enough money to buy the dragon horn. I have over $100 million. Chapter 1491. Chen Zhao chuckled, ignoring the fact that Dahlia wouldn't spend all her money on a dragon horn. Even if she really bought it, $100 million wouldn't be enough. If Chen Zhao multiplied it by 10, he would consider it. Delamore, let me explain it to you. The last time a dragon appeared was in 1914, and the last time a pure-blooded dragon was hunted was in 1798. According to the ancient records, in that battle to slay the dragon, more than 300 spiritualists participated in the battle, and most of them were witches. In the end, only 18 of them survived. In the end, the dragon only went through a simple collection of materials and took away some of the main magical raw materials. Do you think $100 million USD is enough to buy a dragon horn? Indeed, to Chen Zhao and the supernatural organization, dragons weren't rare anymore. But if Chen Zhao sold it cheaply, he'd be letting down the dragon race. Plus, who knew how many pureblood dragons existed in the world? Perhaps they were hiding in the crowd. Once they found out that one of their kind had been killed, and the corpse sold cheaply, they might come looking for Chen Zhao. This wasn't just the price of raw materials. It was also the price Chen Zhao had to bear. Chen Zhao believed that there were definitely pureblood dragons in the world. Gaia was the best proof, because she was a mixed blood. During the most active era of dragons in the Middle Ages, there were too many dragons with traces and histories. But compared to the records of humans killing dragons, and the natural death rate of dragons, there should be more active dragons in the Middle Ages that survived to the modern era. Moreover, the dragon race could transform into human form. So, Chen Zhao suspected that there were far more pureblood dragons in the world than he'd imagined. In fact, some ancient dragons might even be more powerful than Chen Zhao after years of baptism and accumulation of power. So, Chen Zhao never dared to say that he was invincible. He didn't want a pureblood dragon to appear and slap him in the face. Of course there were risks, but they weren't big. Since the dragons hid themselves, they definitely knew that the current era wasn't one they could do as they pleased. Any government had the ability to kill dragons. Even without spiritualists, they could still kill dragons with modern weapons. If Chen Zhao fought with a dragon, as long as Chen Zhao wasn't killed instantly, there was a high chance that the dragon would die. No matter how strong Chen Zhao was, he was still a human. But dragons were different. Their huge bodies could cause panic in society. He wasn't afraid at all if the dragons fought him in their human forms. Unless it was a dragon at the level of Obito's mother, Chen Zhao would definitely admit defeat. Meanwhile, did great lords of the dragon race exist in this world? Chen Zhao was doubtful. Of course, no matter what, it was impossible to sell it cheaply. Not in this lifetime. He had risked his life for it. A dragon horn in the hands of a reliable alchemist might represent the birth of a divine tool. Even if they didn't want to sell it for the price of a divine artifact, they could at least not embarrass the dragon clan. Daily Moore was speechless. According to Chen Zhao, a dragon horn was obviously worth an astronomical amount of wealth. Her wealth was indeed not enough, unless she shamelessly begged Chen Zhao. However, Dahlia was still a little proud. She didn't think that it was because of her friendship with Chen Zhao, or that favor. Chen Zhao would give her the dragon horn. It was like a tycoon owing a commoner a favor. Could the tycoon give the commoner his entire fortune, because of this favor? That was clearly impossible. Looks like I don't understand the market, Dahlia said helplessly. Then after the magic dragon scale armor is made, I'll send it to you along with the dragon blood. Prepare the recipe for me too. For most people, bathing in dragon blood wasn't just something they could only dream of. They didn't even have the fortune to enjoy it. Before this, Chen Zhao had also bathed in dragon blood. The burning sensation wasn't pleasant. Apart from Gaia, no one else could bear it. President, the silver dragon head is done. Do you need me to send it over? West called Chen Zhao. Do you have any dye? It won't fade in the wind and the sun. Of course, it's harmless. I'll put it in the yard. The dye was so that people wouldn't find out that it was a real skeleton. After all, Chen Zhao's house would occasionally have regular guests. That's not hard. I'll send it over in the afternoon. Okay. In the afternoon, West and Erdos arrived in their car. West had been to Chen Zhao's new house before. Aduz was here for the first time. He mainly came to see the world. Chen Zhao carried the skull to the yard. Chen, are these your spoils of war from slaying the dragon last time? It's so big. Fei Lai saw Chen Zhao carry the huge skull in. Yes, Fei Lai. Do you think the head is facing inside or outside? Facing inside, Fei Lai said. Don't put it so straight. Slanted it a bit. More outwards. Yes, that's perfect. Fei Lai nodded in satisfaction. Mr. West, Mr. Aduz, you're here. Take a seat. I'll have the underlings prepare. As the hostess, Fei Lai was very hospitable. Moreover, West and Aduz were old friends. They knew many of the family's secrets. Yeah. Little Jerlin saw the dragon skull that was set up and ran out excitedly. Dad, is this my birthday present? Your birthday isn't here yet. Jerlin ran to the skull and carefully stuck her head into the open mouth. So big, Jerlin exclaimed. The teeth are as big as Jerlin's. The silver dragon's teeth were very large. The two exposed main teeth were 150 centimeters long. The other teeth on the sides were 50 or 60 centimeters long. The dragon's head was about 15 meters long and took up a quarter of the yard. Fei Lai had a hobby of collecting other worldlings. Chen Zhao developed this hobby mainly because he often hunted mutants. When he was at Mirror Lake Villa, there was one in the basement. But because it was used as a surgery room, Chen Zhao had already put away the demon's skeleton. Compared to the silver dragon's skull, the demon's skeleton was really nothing. Fei Lai also admired the silver dragon's skull. Because it had a layer of artificial gel dye, it looked a bit fake. Fei Lai didn't care though. She knew that it was real. Chapter 1492. A few underlings busied themselves, going in and out of the yard and kitchen. Fei Lai hugged little Larissa and chatted with West and Aduz. Little Jerlin couldn't sit still. She kept climbing up and down. It wasn't just little Jerlin. The pets were the same. Abidos nestled in the dragon's mouth, treating it as his nest. Is Nama Island far from LA? Fei Lai asked curiously. No, only 600 kilometers from LA, West said directly. He didn't want to hide it. When will the ghost ship arrive? It's expected to be on Saturday or the weekend, West replied. He didn't even see Chen Zhao's look. Chen Zhao covered his head. Fei Lai usually asked this because she wanted to join in on the fun. Chen Zhao was helpless, but Fei Lai had already spoken. Chen, let's go to Nama Island for a vacation this weekend. Sure, Chen Zhao said smiling. President, are you going to participate in the mission to destroy the ghost ship? West asked looking up. He hadn't realized his problem yet. He thought that Chen Zhao was going to help someone in the association. When he'd suggested this mission, he hoped that everyone wouldn't need Chen Zhao's help. They would participate in the mission themselves. He didn't care whether it was completed or not. He hoped that the association members would participate themselves. But if Chen Zhao joined, what was the point? The Turin ghost ship was indeed fierce. But could it be fiercer than Chen Zhao? No, we're just going for a vacation. Little Jerlin and Larissa are going too. Vacation, you understand? I see. West didn't say anything else. After all, he was Chen Zhao's subordinate. West guessed that Chen Zhao was worried about Jolene and Nash, so he'd gone to ensure their safety. But West didn't have the time to care about Chen Zhao's attitude. There were too many spiritualists in LA these few days. Most of them were here for the Scarlet Legacy, but there were always a few who didn't know what was good for them. They dared to cause trouble in LA. West had no choice but to deal with these weaklings. The supernatural organization wasn't in charge of criminal cases. But if it was a criminal case created by someone from the spiritual world, they'd take it too. For most of the spiritualists, perhaps they would behave themselves in their hometown. But in other places, they couldn't help but feel itchy. They felt that it was possible to make money and leave. Unfortunately, this was Los Angeles. Chen Zhao had zero tolerance for this. Usually, paranormal crimes would leave some traces behind. It was different from the damage and destruction caused by gunshots or cold weapons. Or it could be traces of magic and magic power. In short, this was not a problem for the supernatural organization. In fact, psychic criminals are easier to find than regular criminal offenders. Friday, the sky was blue and the sea was blue. The waves on the sea were no more than 1 meter high. This was the best time to spend a vacation on the sea. Chen Zhao's family was currently on the yacht, enjoying a leisurely holiday. The lesser demons had taken over everything on the yacht, from sailing to cleaning to mechanical maintenance. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai planned to take a 3-day 2-night vacation. The Hydra was very slow. Chen Zhao had slowed it down on purpose. Otherwise, a round trip of less than 2,000 kilometers would probably be completed in a day. Little Larissa could already crawl faster than little Jerlin last year. This was mainly because of little Jerlin's guidance. Little Jerlin stayed with little Larissa every day, taking care of her. To teach little Larissa, Jerlin also lay on the ground with her and taught her how to move and kick. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai watched the two little meatballs grow up day by day. That was the feeling that allowed them to experience the joy of being a parent. After giving birth to little Larissa, Fei Lai started working out and losing weight in less than a week. Back then, she had gained a lot of weight for little Larissa in her stomach. Chen Zhao suggested that Fei Lai take confinement. However, foreigners did not have the concept of confinement. Some women in the workplace would go to work 3 days after giving birth. Of course, other than the concept of confinement, it was also because of their race. Foreigners' overall physiques were indeed better than Asians. On the other hand, Caucasian women grew up 1 to 2 years earlier than Asians, while men grew up 2 to 3 years earlier. On the other hand, their bodies fully matured about 5 years earlier than Asians. This meant that Caucasians aged faster than Asians. In fact, because they did not have the habit of confinement, the hormones in white women's bodies would be out of balance after giving birth for the first time, causing them to age faster. The imbalance of hormones would also cause the pores and follicles to grow bigger. 20% of the women even needed to shave. Razors and razors became essential daily necessities. White women's hair growth was even thicker than Asians' men's. Chen Zhao did not want Fei Lai to shave every day, so he had been controlling her diet recently. All the pets were running around crazily on the yacht. "Master, I also want a yacht named after me." Black Ma came to Chen Zhao's side shyly. "No, the next yacht should be named after me," White Ma shouted. Chen Zhao kicked them all into the sea. "Meow. Human, I think you should consider using the great name Samuel. My name will also bless your battleship, allowing you to dominate the 7 seas and rule the world." Chen Zhao glanced at Samuel and picked him up. "Give me a blessing first. If you can do it, I'll give you the naming rights for the next yacht. This is my gift to you. Shouldn't you feel honored?" "Honored my *SS. Chen Zhao casually threw Samuel off the 3rd deck. "Beelzebub, save me. Beelzebub flew over and picked Samuel up in his mouth. Then he landed accurately on the lower deck. In this family, Beelzebub and Raymond were Samuel's loyal lackeys. Even though they were subordinate to the king of gluttony and the king of sex, Samuel's status was too high. They had no choice but to submit to Samuel's monstrous might. Even though Samuel was just a kitten in the human world, they still could not think of disobeying him. This time King Kong came too. But because he was too afraid of the sea, he stayed on the top deck. To him, the further away he was from the sea, the safer he was. King Kong, how do I strengthen my body now? Chen Zhao asked. Master, you need to collect the blood of 100 subordinates of the King of Power. Then find the secret medicine Shadow in Hell, and ask him to help you make power blood. As the subordinate of the King of Power, King Kong knew all the ways to strengthen one's body. Chapter 1493. Is there any other way? Chen Zhao asked. Killing 100 demons was easy. He just needed to go to hell. But collecting the blood of 100 subordinates of the King of Power was troublesome. First of all, the King of Power was one of the 99 demon kings. Moreover, the number of subordinates of the King of Power was extremely low. In hell, they were as rare as pandas. King Kong was one, but he could only be one. Yes, you can get a drop of blood from the King of Power. As long as you don't explode, you'll have the constitution of a lord. Fuck, that's as good as not saying anything. I might as well ask the handsome guy for a drop of blood. Of course, a drop of the handsome guy's blood was useless to Chen Zhao too. That thing was only useful for top lords. A drop of blood could create a secondary demon king. Anyone below the level of a great lord would die with a touch. If it released its full power, everything within 100 kilometers would turn into ashes. Even a great lord would not be spared. As for getting a drop of blood from the King of Power, Chen Zhao was right. He was still 1,000,000 kilometers away from the lesser demon king. He wasn't even a lord yet. Even if he really won the lottery, he would explode, let alone collect it. He should think about how to collect the blood of 100 King of Power. Ask Beelzebub Zophie to help him collect it? The couple was waging war now. They didn't have the time to find and kill the subordinates of the King of Power. Plus, if the King of Power found out that the couple specifically killed his subordinates, they might be targeted by the King of Power. With the couple's power, they definitely couldn't beat the King of Power. Or they could ask the handsome guy to collect it. But if the Lord of Hell went to the King of Power and asked him to kill 100 of his subordinates, would that be okay? Even the handsome guy probably wouldn't be able to do that. Or go to hell himself. But both the handsome guy and Beelzebub Zophie could only summon for 24 hours. How big of an area could they search in 24 hours? Is there any other way? Yes, the heart of the earth and the demonic root. What's the heart of the earth? What is the Maduni root? 10,000 meters underground in hell, there is a kind of stone demon. You might be able to find a heart of the earth in 10,000 stone demons. King Kong said. The Mortuoni root is the reproductive organ of the abyss wanderers. Chen Zhao's face darkened. Is there no reliable way? I can do it with my current abilities. As a subordinate of the King of Power, King Kong knew all the ways in the world to increase his power. Even if Chen Zhao surpassed the King of Power one day, King Kong would know how to increase Chen Zhao's power. Because this was an ability bestowed upon them by the laws of power. However, the more King Kong spoke, the more ridiculous it became. The methods were endless. The only difference was whether they were reliable or not. For example, he could absorb a great lord's mana source and reshape it into a power source. If I can steal a great lord's mana source, do I still need to waste words with you? Why don't you create your own source of power? What do you mean by creating a source of power? What is the source of power? Just like the mana source. According to the laws of the King of Power, power is also the source of all physical power. What about your source of power? Me? I don't have one. I can't create a source of power. I'm not at that level yet. Master, you've already reached the level of creating a source of power. King Kong shook his head. Also, among the King of Power's subordinates, there are less than 10 who have a source of power. Even some great lords don't have a source of power. How many subordinates does the King of Power have? Chen Zhao asked. Around 1,000, King Kong said. Maybe more. 1%. Chen Zhao touched his chin. Just then, Samuel jumped to King Kong's side. The King of Power has 1,000 subordinates? I thought your race was about to go extinct. A few thousand years ago, my original body tried to increase my power and capture the subordinates of the King of Power. Evidently, to a demon king like Samuel, killing was not a big deal. So what if he destroyed a race of demons? So what if this race was the subordinate of a secondary demon king? Then how do I create a source of power? A feeling. Be more specific. Specifically, if you feel it, then you succeed. Do you have anything else? Chen Zhao asked with a dark expression. I also know that if I feel it, then I succeed. But what is the feeling? Who would be able to understand such a general concept? Just then a yacht approached from the side. The yacht was only a quarter of the length of the Hydra, but it was already quite big. There were a few people on the deck of the yacht. There were probably a few more in the cabin. These people didn't look like rich people, but they didn't look like ordinary people either. Chen Zhao saw that one of them had an obvious supernatural style. The person's face was painted with oil patterns. He wore a gentleman's hat and a pure white suit. There was a flower on his chest, and his left eye was golden. The others weren't as obvious as this person, but Chen Zhao could more or less tell what was special about them. This ship is so big. Rich people. King Tong, what are you looking at? A woman came to the man with oil paint on his face. Pian and King Tong were teammates. They were both spiritualists who had rushed over from other places. The others on the ship were the same, but they didn't have much money, so they teamed up and rented such a yacht. The rental of this yacht cost $8,000 a day, and it was expected to take 4 days, so it was $32,000. Ordinary spiritualists didn't have that much money. Of course, it was a good thing that they teamed up to rent a yacht, but the problem was that many spiritualists were a bit unruly. That ship. What? Do you also envy the life of the rich? Pian said with a smile. That's an ominous yacht, King Tong said. Pian looked surprised. He looked up and saw an Asian standing on the third deck of the yacht. The Hydra. It's inevitable that it will attract bad luck to give its yacht such a name. I wonder if the person on that ship is also a spiritualist. King Tong also saw Chen Zhao. He also saw that Chen Zhao was looking at him. His condescending gaze made him very uncomfortable. You don't know how to enjoy yourself when you have money. You come here to take risks. I really don't know what you're thinking. Pian pursed his lips, but looking at the luxurious yacht in front of him, he couldn't help but look envious. Spiritualists were also humans, and humans also had emotions and desires. Who wouldn't want to have a good life? Chapter 1494. Although the small yacht passed by the Hydra, it was not a big yacht. However, there was no real interaction between the two. The spiritualists on the yacht envied the rich people on the Hydra, but they weren't real bandits after all. There might be 1 or 2 spiritualists with bad intentions, but most of them were good-natured people. That's the spiritualist on the yacht, right? Fei Lai came to Chen Zhao's side and handed him a glass of juice. Yes, probably. Chen Zhao didn't think much of it. This route led directly to Arma Island. It wasn't surprising to see a spiritualist's boat here. At this time, Ma Island was already crowded with people. The land area was originally about 10 square kilometers, but now there were at least 100 people. The familiar spiritualists gathered together in 2s and 3s. There were also some eccentric spiritualists who hid in the forest to communicate with nature. In the beginning, Arma Island had been a trading island. It had been a transfer point for goods from California. At that time, shipping mainly relied on ships. Goods from Europe or slaves from Africa were all placed on this small island, and then transferred to the big coastal towns on the west coast. However, after a few hundred years, the buildings on the island were already broken. Only some traces of the past could be seen, but it wasn't as busy as before. Because it was unnaturally abandoned, some exposed skeletons could even be found on the island. This island had once brought disaster and death because of Turin. There had also been a tragic supernatural war. The first traders and adventurers weren't willing to give up on this island, because to them Jima Island was very valuable. At that time, Los Angeles and San Francisco were only medium-sized towns. The main gathering place for European immigrants was on the east coast in the other direction. Therefore, most trading ships were destined for Manhattan. If they docked at the west coast, it would increase their shipping cycle. Therefore, they needed a west coast distribution center like Arma Island to unload some of the goods, and then load some of the goods from Arma Island onto the ships. For the traders, Arma Island was a port that they couldn't lose. Therefore, to calm the disaster caused by Turin, the traders spent a lot of money and gathered a large number of spiritualists to clear out Turin. Of course, the result was predictable. Over the past 300 years, various organizations, forces, and individuals had gathered again and again. But the result was still the same. Gradually, people stopped trying, because this was a hopeless war. On the contrary, the Turin became even more terrifying, because the witches, wizards, and awakened who had died in battle had all become Turin's slaves. They were far more dangerous than the normal Spectre crew. In the spirit world, an ordinary Spectre ship was already considered a disaster. But Durian was above the calamity level. Generally speaking, a Spectre ship cleanup operation would require a dozen or so witches to go around in a circle. Whether they succeeded or not, the difficulty was basically the same. However, Turin was different. In the beginning, there were only a few tens of witches, but now there were hundreds of them. The largest gathering of 300 spiritualists was a gathering. King Tong and Payan arrived at the island, and the other psychics also got off the boat. At this time, the colorful tents on the beach. King Tong frowned. Payan looked at King Tong and asked, "What's wrong? This won't do. We have no chance of winning." "Why?" "I think there are a lot of people. It's not enough. I've studied several precedents of cleaning up Turin, and there are also some cases of successfully wiping out Spectre ships." King Tong said, 50% of the Spectre ships appear with a strong storm. Look at those people. They all stay on the coast. Once Turin arrives, the storm alone can cause them heavy casualties. And the number of people is far less than the number of people who can wipe out Turin. According to the information we received, Turin will arrive here tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow. There should be more psychics who haven't gone to sea yet. Payan said. It's said that more than 500 psychics have come to Los Angeles recently, so the people here are definitely not all. Forget it. We'd better make our own preparations. We can't pin our hopes on others. Don't be so pessimistic. Among the psychics who came to Los Angeles this time, there are also many powerful ones, such as Ms. Tem Lien, Ms. Iskich. There are also many famous psychics outside North America. These people are indeed very strong, but there is no unified command. Everyone is fighting on their own. Can they wipe out that horrible Turin? In fact, you know in your heart that it's impossible to wipe out Turin in this battle, Payan said. King Tong stopped talking. In fact, she was not the only one. Many psychics who came to Roma Island knew that. It was impossible to achieve results with just one annihilation operation. In fact, on the route of Turin, all the stations were part of the ambush and annihilation operation. Roma Island was just the first stop. There were several more stations on the route, where many psychics had gathered. To be honest, it's the first time I've participated in such a grand operation. Payan sounded a little excited. You're still young. You haven't participated in the world-class operation in Wuxia 20 years ago. Did you also get your King Tong in that battle? Yes, it's the same as this operation. Through the Heroic Spirit Notebook, we recorded our achievements. However, the battle 20 years ago was even grander. It was led by China's Kunlun Mountain. Tens of thousands of spiritualists from all over the world gathered to face the Thousand Goblin King, who had been sealed for 1,000 years. You definitely can't imagine how tragic and shocking that battle was. Was the Myriad Demon King very powerful? In fact, the Myriad Demon King did not come out of the seal. It was just that his demon aura leaked out and attracted thousands of demons. My eyeball was gouged out by a demon in that battle. Then, because of my achievements, I was rewarded with a special eyeball, which is my King Tong now. It's a pity that I was born 10 years too late. Otherwise, I would have been able to participate in that great battle. It's exciting to think about it. It's a pity that the spiritual world is getting weaker and weaker. According to the data of the International Organization, Compared with 20 years ago, even the active rate of the spiritual world in Wuxia has decreased by 20%. I don't know if there will be such a great battle in the future. What if there are no psychics in the future, and there are big demons breaking the seal? Maybe the technology at that time can solve the problem. Chapter 1495. At present, human technology was already very powerful. The most powerful part was, of course, in the war weapons. Of course, they weren't omnipotent. For example, the ghost ship was something that modern war weapons couldn't solve. After all, the ships that the Turan had sunk were not only cargo ships, but also warships, modern warships. King Tong told Pian about the unparalleled battle 20 years ago. His tone was filled with sorrow, but there was also a trace of nostalgia. Yes, she was nostalgic about that battle. That might be the last glory of the spiritual world. In that battle, both the good and evil sides were surprisingly united. Facing the army of demons and monsters, they rose up to resist. For the outside world, it might be calm, but to the otherworldly spirit world, it was a soul-stirring scene. Page after page of climax after climax, magnificent chapters unfolded on a magnificent scale. In fact, many people had guessed the 23rd Blood Mary's intention. The 23rd Blood Mary wanted to use this matter to arouse the enthusiasm of the spiritual world. It might not be able to reach the epic level of the unparalleled battle 20 years ago, but it could at least ignite the enthusiasm of the members of the spiritual world. Whether it was good or evil, no one wanted to disappear like this. Even if she had to sacrifice herself, the 23rd Blood Mary still wanted to illuminate the unknown path. Of course, not everyone had this kind of awareness. Most of the people still had the thought of taking advantage of the situation and participated in this operation. Or they just wanted to join in the fun. For example, Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao wasn't in the mood to watch the fun. He was holding a shotgun and pointing it at the sky. "Get out of here! Get away!" Chen Zhao roared at a group of seagulls in the sky. Seagulls were mascots for sailors. They were gluttonous, bold, and liked to play pranks. For example, they could shit on a sailor's head. But every sailor was willing to treat them well. Because in the past, without the support of modern technology, sailing was very dangerous. Many times, they couldn't see land for months because they were lost. For sailors in that era, being lost meant despair. Only when they saw seagulls could they see hope. Because there were seagulls, there was land. Since some time, seagulls had become the mascots of sailors. However, Chen Zhao clearly didn't like these troublemakers. Because they shit on Chen Zhao's deck. He just didn't want to shoot in front of Jerlin and Larissa. So he just used the gun to scare the seagulls. However, Chen Zhao was born with a curse. He would never be hit by a gun. The only time Chen Zhao had hit someone was when he pointed the gun at the person's temple last year. Don't think the seagulls don't understand. In fact, they are smarter than most birds. They knew what a gun was. A gray-blue seagull has never left, and has been hovering over the Hydra. This grayish-blue seagull was about half the size of an ordinary seagull. However, it was quite fast, and the other seagulls were scared away. The grayish-blue seagull refused to leave. He swooped down several times in an attempt to snatch the meat on the table. Seagulls are also known as pirate birds. They can be said to do all kinds of bad things, and all kinds of good things. They had done all sorts of things, such as murder and arson, as well as things like turtle doves occupying magpies' nests. They could even prey on their own kind. In fact, in their eyes, as long as they were not as big as them, everything was on their menu. Chen Zhao didn't have a good impression of seagulls, especially after they shit above his boat. Just then, the grayish-blue seagull swooped down. Chen Zhao's eyes flashed. He had already rushed to the seagull, and was about to grab it. But at that moment, the seagull lifted the plate on the table and hit Chen Zhao. Then it rose into the air even faster. Chen Zhao gasped. So fast. His movements just now definitely surpassed the speed of sound, but he didn't manage to catch the damn bird. Phew. Scared me. I almost fell into the human's hands. Just then Chen Zhao heard a voice. It was demon language. Chen Zhao raised his head and looked at the seagull. Demon? Human? You can understand me? Where did you come from? Chen Zhao asked. I don't know. I appeared in the human world out of nowhere. Damn it. I want to know why I appeared in the human world too. And this body is too weak. It's so uncomfortable. Other than my speed, all my power is gone. The gray-blue seagull complained to itself. Not a demon originally in the human world? Had it just been summoned to the human world? But considering how weak it was, it should be very powerful in hell. Chen Zhao's heart jumped. Had he summoned it? But ever since King Kong, Chen Zhao hadn't summoned a demon servant of his own accord. What was up with this demon that had transformed into a seagull? Had he unintentionally developed some kind of emotion? What kind of demon are you? Human, if you acknowledge me as your master, I will tell you my name. Furthermore, I will bestow upon you endless wealth and power. Whoosh! Chen Zhao raised his hand. I order you in the name of your master to come down and kneel at my feet. Beg for my mercy and mercy. An invisible contract power immediately bound the seagull and pulled him onto the deck. Damn it! What's going on? Why do I have a contract with you? The seagull cursed. Had he really summoned it? Wow, bird. Just then, Jerlin ran over and grabbed the seagull on the ground. She opened her mouth and bit the seagull's wing. The seagull immediately fluttered and broke free from Jerlin. Wow! Jerlin suddenly burst into tears. Dad, bad bird. It hurts. Chen Zhao saw that the seagull's claws had made Jerlin bleed. Furious, Chen Zhao pointed at the seagull that had just flown up and roared. Get down here. Instantly, the seagull landed on the deck again. Chen Zhao went up and took out a small angelic crystal. Wow. Caw. Angel. The angelic crystal emitted a holy aura that made him feel as if his soul was burning. But his real body wasn't weak, so he wasn't purified yet. But precisely because his real body wasn't weak, his projection was also tenacious and didn't get destroyed. This caused him to suffer even longer. The seagull struggled and feathers fell everywhere. Only then did Chen Zhao take out the angelic crystal and throw the dying seagull onto the deck. This is your punishment for hurting my daughter? Despicable human. If this wasn't a projection, you'd be dead already. Do you know that? If this wasn't your projection but your real body, you'd be dead already. Do you know that? Chapter 1496. One was a demon, and the other was Chen Zhao. Both sides belonged to the category of unreasonable people. Stupid bird, tell me your name. I'm not stupid bird. I'm the noble Akira Basin. Oh, isn't this a little demon? Samuel jumped onto the fence and looked down at the seagull. Samuel, you know him? Samuel? You're Samuel's subordinate? No, this gaze, this aura. All of Basin's feathers were standing on end, just like how Beelzebub and Raymond had been when they first saw Samuel. Lower your lowly head. How can a lowly, worthless piece of shit like you, who doesn't even have a subordinate, call me by my name? Samuel was as arrogant and vicious as ever. In Chen Zhao's and Fei Lai's eyes, Samuel was just a little kitten. But in the demon's eyes, even a kitten's image and an insignificant aura could destroy the world. It was still as terrifying as if it could destroy the world. Please forgive lowly servant Akira Basin. My ignorance and stupidity have offended the great king of wrath. Basin dared to be so rude to Chen Zhao. Even though he'd sensed the existence of the contract, he still boasted shamelessly. That was because he wanted Chen Zhao to kill him now. That way, Chen Zhao wouldn't be able to bind him. An extremely weak projection was of no use to him. Moreover, this projection was bound by the contract. But Samuel was different. If he dared to talk nonsense to Samuel here, or even show the slightest bit of disrespect, Samuel would chase his real body to the ends of the earth and hell. Right now, Basin only felt that this place was terrifying. Why was the King of Wrath's projection here? It seemed to be very familiar with this human. Was the King of Wrath also a contract demon servant summoned by this human? This was impossible. No one could sign a contract with the Seven Kings. Even if it was just an insignificant projection, it would still represent a great demon king. But if it wasn't a contract demon servant, how did the King of Wrath's projection come to the human world? Samuel, stop acting cool, Chen Zhao said. Tell me, what's this thing? Little devil, a demon of mischief. They like to prank others and enjoy watching a good show. In hell, wherever there is a war, there will be them. They like to mock the losers after the war is over and plunder the wealth and equipment of the losers. They are the most unpopular demons in hell. Samuel's eyes were filled with disgust as he spoke. That's right. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin. Did he summon this little demon because he came to watch the show? At this moment, Basin was lying on the ground like an obedient baby, without any of his previous arrogant attitude. But this had nothing to do with Chen Zhao. He was only afraid of Samuel. The title of the Great Demon King was basically a passport in hell, and it was quite useful. Chen Zhao went up and kicked Basin. Since you're my demon servant now, you better remember your identity and my rules. If you dare to disobey my orders, your projection will have to eat angelic crystals every day. Samuel will also take special care of your real body. Basin looked at Chen Zhao with a smile on his face. Do you want me to go find his main body now? I'll stuff his skin with angelic crystals, and I won't let him die. I can even place an undying curse on him, so that he'll suffer eternal torture and destruction. Samuel wasn't a torturer, but his violent nature represented cruelty and madness. Even if he was just scaring Basin, he still showed his cruel side. Actually, Basin wasn't an ordinary little demon. He was a mid-level demon, which was already stronger than 99% of demons. For example, Black Ma and White Ma were subordinates of greed, so they were only low-level demons. The difference was obvious. Basin was so scared that he peed his pants. The King of Wrath's words were like an imperial edict to him. Was his life as a demon going to end just like that? Master, I won't do it again. Please forgive Basin's sins. Chen Zhao knew so many demons. There were strong, despicable, greedy, and all kinds of demons. But there were no brave demons. All demons were the same. Cowards. No matter how arrogant they were when they appeared, they would always cower. But when the situation wasn't right, they would definitely cower. Of all the demons Chen Zhao had summoned, the only one who was obedient was Carrie. But she only acted obedient in front of Chen Zhao. In fact, she was very cunning, especially toward Beelzebub, Raymond, and Black Ma and White Ma. Are you dead? If you're not, get up. If you dare to scratch my daughter again, I'll let you swim in the sea of holy light. Chen Zhao tossed a dozen angelic crystals of various sizes onto the deck. Samuel shrieked and ran away immediately. Basin, on the other hand, did not escape. In an instant, his body curled up into a ball. Ha! The feathers on Basin's body were already burning. These weren't the small angelic crystal shards from before. The angelic crystals were all bigger than the previous one. Basin had never seen so many angelic crystals in his life. And most of them were shockingly big. Even if he didn't touch them, just the holy aura they emitted was enough to make him burn. Seeing that it was about time, Chen Zhao put away the angelic crystals. He controlled a ball of seawater and smashed it onto Basin. Chen Zhao squatted down before Jerlin and held her hand gently. He touched the shallow wound and blew on it. Baby, does it still hurt? Jerlin wiped away her tears. Yes, a little. Hey, he's yours now. You can do whatever you want. He won't dare to catch you again, Chen Zhao said. I can do whatever I want. Jerlin was still a bit afraid of Basin. Yes, he's called Basin. No, he's called Bad Bird. Then Bad Bird, Chen Zhao said, nodding. Jerlin carefully walked to Basin's side. As expected, he didn't dare to attack her anymore. After being threatened by Chen Zhao and Samuel, he now knew that it wasn't easy to survive in the human world. Bad Bird, do you still dare to catch me? Chen Zhao looked at the dazed Basin and stepped on his wing. My daughter asked you a question. Don't you understand? I don't. What's little master talking about? Fuck, you can't learn a foreign language even if you come to the human world. In 3 days, you have to learn to at least understand the basic human language. If you can't, please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1497. Darling, are you sure that little seagull won't be eaten by little Jerlin? Phalai looked at Basin worriedly. Little Jerlin grabbed Basin's neck roughly. Basin wanted to struggle and resist, but he was afraid that he would hurt little Jerlin. Basin wasn't as big as a normal seagull, but he was still around 60 centimeters when he spread his wings. He was definitely a big bird. Little Jerlin was a child who didn't know her own limits. She had a terrifying trait. Even when Princess was as big as her, she had tried to eat her before. Chen Zhao suspected that little Jerlin had inherited his gluttonous bloodline. But little Jerlin always liked to use Basin to measure her mouth. She would grab Basin's neck and stuff it into her mouth. "It's fine," Chenjiao said unconcerned. "As long as he doesn't hurt little Jerlin." Thankfully, little Jerlin's teeth weren't fully grown yet, and she didn't have much strength. Little Jerlin's unconventional hobby was similar to that of most children. Children between 1 and 2 years old would stuff whatever they felt they could into their mouths. According to research organizations, more than 10,000 babies died every year because they accidentally swallowed something. Babies judged and learned about the world through their taste buds. So Chenjiao never stopped little Jerlin from stuffing things into her mouth. Even if it was a rock, a child would spit it out after realizing that it couldn't be eaten. Of course, if it was something that wasn't too big or small, it might get stuck in the throat. So, Chenjiao and Fei Lai wouldn't put such things in the house. Even if they did, they would put it away and put it somewhere Jerlin couldn't reach. Almost all the pets in the house had been attacked by little Jerlin's demonic mouth. "Save me. Master, save me. King Samuel, save me." Unfortunately, everyone turned a blind eye to Basin's cries for help. On Noma Island, the people who came today either had nothing to do or needed to prepare in advance. Pian looked at the formation pattern drawn by Cinnabar on the ground, somewhat confused. "King Tong, what's this magic formation? How come I've never seen it before?" "This is the 4 symbols demon subduing formation of the Eastern Dragon Tiger Mountain sect. It's a very powerful Eastern magic formation. You know Eastern spells? I once participated in an Eastern warlock crash course," King Tong said, "because my eyeball came from a demon's eyeball. Later, it was refined into a divine eye by an Eastern warlock, so I need Eastern magic to activate it. In the next few years, I have been active in the East. I have to say that the spiritual world in the East is very active. You can't imagine it at all. Maybe the beggars sitting on the street all have powerful magic power. How do I use this 4 symbols demon subduing formation?" Generally speaking, the 4 symbols exorcism formation requires 4 warlocks to operate, and then the formation will transform into the 4 symbols guardian divine beasts, azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise. King Tong said, "But because I have King Tong, I can activate it alone. Through the refraction of my divine eyes, I can transform the 4 symbols divine beasts. Then what should I do? When the battle starts, the 4 symbols demon subduing formation will gradually be depleted, so you need to be a tinkerer. Once a part of the formation is missing, you must immediately fill in the missing part. Otherwise, the 4 symbols demon subduing formation will gradually weaken." Although Pian and King Tong were partners, Pian belonged to King Tong's support staff. Pian had more powerful magic power than King Tong, but she was not good at attacking and fighting. It was not until she met King Tong that she was able to show her talent. King Tong's magic knowledge was very profound, and it could be said that she had learned a lot of things. She knew all kinds of magic and spells from both the East and the West. And she also had an eye that was almost a divine weapon. But the disadvantage was also quite obvious. That was, her magic power was insufficient. Therefore, Pian was like a mobile power source for King Tong. When King Tong's magic power was insufficient, Pian was responsible for guiding the magic power to King Tong. At this moment, a group of 4 spiritualists appeared next to Pian and King Tong. Moreover, it seemed that they did not intend to leave after arriving here. They also planned to set up camp here, or to use this place as a position. This made Pian and King Tong dissatisfied. Pian shouted with dissatisfaction, "Hey, can't you see that there are people here? Yo, is there anyone here?" There were 2 women and 3 men in this group of spiritualists, but judging from their faces, it was obvious that they did not know how to communicate well. "Do you see the 5 of us?" One of the women looked at Pian and King Tong and said, "If you know what's good for you, get out of here. Hey, there are still packages here." These people suddenly found that there were still a few unopened bags in the place they had chosen. Pian and King Tong frowned. Weren't those packages these people's? That was to say, before the 2 of them arrived, someone had put the things here? Suddenly a figure fell from the sky. Everyone was frightened by this figure. Could he fly? No matter what means he relied on, He was definitely a strong level figure. Jalanash looked at the people in front of her and said, "These are my things, and this is my territory. If you know what's good for you, get out of here." One of Jalanash's palms was burning with flames, and the other was holding a ball of cold air. Pian exclaimed, "Be careful." The witch, who had been standing behind Jalanash, suddenly shot 2 wooden thorns at Jalanash's back. However, when the wooden thorns hit Jalanash's back, they did not penetrate it and fell directly to the ground. Jalanash was furious. She hadn't done anything yet, but these guys dared to make a move first. Jalanash waved her left hand, and a ball of cold air burst out. Oh no! The witch reacted very quickly. Sensing the danger, she hurriedly flew out. The cold air hit the tree trunk behind her. In an instant, the tree, which was more than 10 meters high, turned into an ice sculpture. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. What a powerful ice magic! The witch was also frightened. If she hadn't dodged just now, she would have turned into an ice sculpture. Seeing that their companions were attacked, the other 4 were about to take action immediately. But the next moment, countless vines suddenly grew out of the feet of the 5 people. In just 3 seconds, the 5 spiritualists were all tied up like dumplings. Morid came out of the woods and asked, "Jalanash, who are they? Are those 2 with them? Should we tie them up too?" "No, they're not with us." Jalanash looked at Pian and King Tong and nodded slightly to express her gratitude for Pian's reminder. At this time, Lit Grove, Bona, Giselle and more all came back. "Why did you all leave? Leaving our luggage here, without anyone looking after it." Chapter 1498. I'm going to pick fruits. Lit Grove held up the 2 coconuts in his hands. "I'm going fishing." Bona picked up a big fish. "I'm going to look for water." Giselle picked up a can of packaged pure water. "Did you find this in that river? And it's packaged?" Jalanash was speechless. "I asked for it from someone else," Giselle said. Moir hesitated for a long time, and everyone's eyes fell on him. Moir hesitated. He had gone out to play. This was the first time he had camped in the wild with so many people. But he couldn't say that. After thinking about it, he explained, "I think we didn't bring enough things, so I asked others to come and steal our things. Then we could rob them." Pian and King Tong felt a chill. What kind of person was this? Alright, throw these guys far away. Jalanash was acting like a big sister. Usually, it was not her turn to make decisions in the association. However, in this place, she was experienced, powerful, and had high prestige. Of course, she would be the boss. Although Moir and Morit had the same qualifications as her, they were relatively low-key. They wouldn't compete with Jalanash for the boss. Jalanash looked at King Tong and Pian and walked up to them. "Hello, are you also camping here?" Pian looked back and said, "We set up a magic formation here. We didn't know that someone was here." "Oh, it doesn't matter. We're just camping here. We don't need to make any special preparations. If you set up a magic formation here, we won't disturb you." Pian and King Tong used this place as a battlefield, so they needed a certain amount of space in this area. They had the same purpose as the previous group of people, so there was a conflict of interest between them. After all, no one wanted to be robbed. As for Jalanash and the others, none of them was a psychic who was good at positional warfare. Moreover, they were fighting on their own. There was a distance from the coastline, and they planned to go directly to the front line to fight. So there was no problem of killing. Pian and King Tong no longer had any objections. After all, the other party had a large number of people and was strong. Since there was no substantial conflict of interest, there was no need for one party to leave. Of course, King Tong was not really afraid of Jalanash and the others. If they really fought, he had some confidence in himself. However, after getting along with them, Pian and King Tong found that Jalanash and the others were very easy to talk to. They even felt that these young people were like big kids. In fact, Moore was a big kid. He had just turned 16 not long ago. Even Jalanash and Morid were only in their early 20s. Among them, Lit Grove was actually the oldest, but he had the least experience. Although he had the halo of being Chen's student, he didn't have many privileges in the association. What he had, so did the others. King Tong was now in her 40s, and Pian was in his early 30s. In their eyes, Jalanash and the others were all children. What organization are you from? Or a small gang? Or from the same family? Pian asked. We're organized, Jalanash answered briefly, but didn't give any more information. Both Pian and King Tong were experienced, but they only asked one question. If they continued to ask, once they touched on the secret part, it might make them vigilant. If they were willing to tell them, it would be their business. Did your superiors just let you out? Yes, and they didn't let us join hands. They asked us to fight on our own, saying that they wanted to test our actual combat ability. You guys should be the focus of your organization's training, right? Your organization is willing to let you out without giving you any protection measures? We can protect ourselves, and we have something to protect ourselves, Moore said. Jalanash glanced at Moore, and Moore immediately realized that he had said too much. If the other party was up to no good, and found out what treasures they had, it was hard to guarantee that they wouldn't have evil intentions. Fortunately, Pian and King Tong didn't have any malicious intentions, so they didn't continue to talk about this topic. Mr. King Tong, why are your eyes golden? What kind of magic is it? Lit Grove asked curiously. Speaking of this golden pupil, it's time to tell my story. King Tong liked to tell people her story. Pian, on the other hand, was a fan of King Tong, and she liked to listen to King Tong's past experience the most. Listening to King Tong's past experience, everyone couldn't help but daydream, and their eyes lit up. China? I want to see it too. My teacher is from China. He's the best spiritualist I've ever seen. No one is better than him in this world, Lit Grove said. That's right. I want to see it too. Of course, King Tong and Pian would not refute or correct him. In their eyes, a young man like Lit Grove might not have had much contact with spiritualists. Therefore, it was not surprising that he would worship a powerful spiritualist and regard him as the most powerful spiritualist in the world. For example, when Pian first met King Tong, she also thought that King Tong was the most powerful spiritualist in the world. But later, when she had more contact with the outside world and more spiritualists, she found that the world was bigger and more wonderful than she had imagined. Of course, there were many spiritualists who were more powerful than King Tong. King Tong was very powerful. Coupled with her golden divine eyes, she could be invincible in most of the battles. But she was not invincible in the world. She might not even be ranked in the top 10,000. Didn't your teacher come? He should be. I guess he's watching us from somewhere now, Lit Grove said. Suddenly, he felt a chill on his scalp. He wiped it with his palm, and immediately changed his expression. Oh, that damn seagull actually shat on my head. Everyone stayed away from Lit Grove, trying to hold back their laughter. If there is a prophet here at this time, he will say that you will get good luck, King Tong said with a smile. Will it bring good luck to be shat on my head by a seagull? Seagulls are the auspicious birds of sailors and pirates. You know, every time the Vikings go to sea, they will take the initiative to smear the fun of seagulls on their faces. They think that it can bring good luck. Well, is that really the case? Lit Grove took King Tong's words seriously. Chapter 1499. Do you have guns? Do any of you have guns? Lit Grove was about to go crazy. He had gone to take a shower 6 or 7 times. Every time, as soon as he took a shower, he would fly in the sky. Who could stand it? Most importantly, the same seagull had thrown him down 6 or 7 times. Is this seagull constipated? Even if it's constipated, it won't just stare at Grove. Bona tried not to laugh. This is obviously abnormal, Pian said. She was the most experienced and meticulous among the group. King Tong hadn't realized it yet, but Pian had already realized the problem. Do you know anyone who can control animals? Pian asked. Is it an enemy? King Tong frowned at Pian's reminder. It's not an enemy. If it was an enemy, it wouldn't just be flying high in the sky. This is obviously a prank. Moreover, it's purposely reminding them of its existence. If it was an enemy, it would only move quietly and not so blatantly. Is it our teacher? Looks like it's the president. But when did the president have a pet seagull? Seeing that Jalanash and the others had already come to a conclusion, Pian asked. It's not an enemy, right? No. Is your teacher an animal tamer or a druid? Neither. My teacher is an animal tamer. Pian and King Tong clearly didn't believe that an animal tamer could tame a seagull so obediently, unless it was an animal tamer's mind control over beasts, or a druid's ability to talk to nature harmoniously. Basin was flying in the sky. Pranking was his instinct. Chen Zhao was observing Jalanash and the others through Basin's vision. This was also something Chen Zhao had discovered not long ago. He realized that he could share vision with Basin. This was good. He didn't need to land on the island to observe Jalanash and the others. If they were in danger, he could help them in time. The yacht wandered 20 nautical miles away from Arma Island and sailed around it. Arma Island had a deep water port, but most of the water was shallow, so the Hydra couldn't get too close. In comparison, the Hydra is a large ship. If it is close to Arma Island in a straight line, it is possible, but if it is around, it is easy to hit the reef. Chen Zhao didn't want the Hydra to hit a reef on its first voyage, so he kept some distance. Chen Zhao leaned against the railing on the deck. Fei Lai was testing the water with little Larissa. Little Larissa instinctively slacked off just like little Jerlin. However, the difference was that little Jerlin had learned to swim in Mirror Lake. But now little Larissa was in the sea. The calm Mirror Lake could not be compared to the surface of the sea. Even when there was no wind, the waves were still coming and going. Thus, Fei Lai did not dare to let go of little Larissa. Just like how Chen Zhao had carried little Jerlin in the past, she held little Larissa's belly with her hands. He had to admit that these two sisters were really the reincarnation of fish. As soon as he came into contact with the water, his hands and feet began to move. Little Larissa was quite excited, but when she saw her sister swimming in front of her in all kinds of positions, little Larissa's interest was gone. She pouted and was about to cry. Standing on the deck, Chen Zhao's face darkened. Jerlin was clearly showing off. Jerlin had been in contact with water for 10 months. She soaked in Mirror Lake for 2 to 3 hours every day. Even an adult might not be able to swim faster than her. Chen Zhao secretly controlled a wave to push little Jerlin away, so that she would not swim in front of her sister. Just then a small yacht approached. The people on the yacht all looked at Chen Zhao with evil intentions. Even from a few hundred meters away, Chen Zhao could feel their gazes. Fei Lai, come up. Let's see if our lunch is ready. Seeing the yacht, Fei Lai understood. Little Jerlin, come here. We're going up. Ow! Like a little mermaid, little Jerlin swam to Fei Lai's side. Then she climbed up the ladder, while Fei Lai carried little Larissa onto the yacht. Darling, don't dirty our boat. Okay. Chen Zhao kissed Fei Lai. Then, Fei Lai brought the two children into the cabin. Just then, the yacht behind them had come over. Half a meter away, the people on the other boat had already jumped onto the Hydra. Hi, I'm Dawson. A big guy wearing a headscarf and a vest walked up to Chen Zhao with a seemingly friendly smile and reached out his hand. However, Chen Zhao did not reach out. His hands were in his pockets, and he looked at Dawson with his upper body bare. Then he looked at the people who had come with Dawson. This is my territory. Please leave this place. At sea, if a stranger jumped onto the other person's boat without any prior notice, there was no doubt that they had encountered pirates with evil intentions. Without a doubt, they must have encountered pirates with evil intentions. Ha! This boat is so big and beautiful. Dawson looked around, his face full of envy. He ignored Chen Zhao's order to leave. He looked left and right, as if he were Chen Zhao's old friend. Dawson's group had already seen the Hydra. It had been wandering around Arma Island for a long time. According to their observation, there were not many crew members on the yacht. There were only a man and a woman. So they thought of something. They were not professional pirates. They were just occasional guests. It's my honor to be a guest on this yacht. Just then, one of Dawson's men wanted to enter the cabin, but the next moment a white shadow flashed by. Snow White had already pushed the man to the ground. Ever since Chen Zhao had brought Snow White home, he had demonized it. Now Snow White was also a hybrid demon. Snow White was more than twice as big as before. It was about the size of a jaguar. The others immediately took a few steps back. They were spiritualists, but they were not good at dealing with wild beasts. Moreover, they did not have guns in their hands. They thought that magic was enough. Snow White bite off his throat. Snow White would not hurt people on its own, nor would it bite them to death. But once Bai Chun gave the order, Snow White would absolutely obey. Even Walter could not compare to it in terms of wildness. Walter had grown up with humans. Its mission and self-awareness was to protect, not harm. But Snow White was different. It and Princess did not have the concept of not killing people. Dawson immediately took out his dagger, wanting to shoot Snow White. But just then, someone grabbed his neck from behind. Chapter 1500. Dawson turned his head with difficulty. He saw that Chun Zhao still had one hand in his pocket, and the other around his neck. Thorn skin. Rock body. Strength multiplication. Beast frenzy. Chun Zhao felt a sharp pain in his palm. Then Dawson broke free from Chun Zhao's grasp. Chun Zhao looked at his palm. There was no wound. Why did it hurt? Dawson was an enhancer spiritualist, and not just one type. Twisting his neck, Dawson grinned at Chun Zhao. Surprised, right, Mr. Druid? Before approaching the Hydra, he'd already known that Chun Zhao was a spiritualist. After all, Chun Zhao couldn't be an ordinary person wandering around a deserted island like Amarantha. So he'd been prepared for battle. When he saw Princess on the third deck and Snow White, who'd pounced out of the cabin, he was sure that Chun Zhao was a beast druid. The others revealed their real weapons too. Of course, their real weapons weren't guns but magic tools or spells. Looks like you're an enhancer too. Dawson snickered. Chun Zhao's grip on the back of his neck just now still felt uncomfortable. But Dawson wasn't afraid anymore. Thorn skin could counter all enhancers. At least when the difference in power wasn't absolute, it had an absolute advantage. Snow White, just bite it to death. Throw the body into the ocean. Don't eat it. Spit out the meat in your mouth, Chun Zhao ordered. Chun Zhao was strict with his pets at home. At first, he didn't even want them to kill people. Later, he'd gotten angry a few times and let them kill. But he definitely couldn't eat people. This was an instinctive human rejection. In the natural world, any intelligent creature would reject its own kind. Snow White dragged the body with the broken neck to the edge of the deck and tossed it into the ocean. At that moment, a shark leaped up and dragged the corpse into the sea. Chun Zhao's face darkened. He'd forgotten about the 5 tiger generals. They thought that he'd fed them. Forget it, I'll just eat it. When Dawson and the others saw the shark eat their companion's body, their expressions were unnatural. Boss, he fed Stan to the sharks, so we'll feed him to the sharks, Dawson said with a dark expression. Boss, I saw that the woman on the boat was very beautiful. A malicious smile appeared on the faces of the others. Ah! Suddenly, the person who spoke felt a sharp pain in his neck, and a cold light flashed. Raymond, who had been curled up on the railing of the second deck, made his move. More accurately, he moved his mouth. Raymond was now 3.5 meters long. He still didn't have the physique of a python, but he was definitely stronger and more agile than a python of the same size in the natural world. Raymond bit the man's neck and lifted him up. At this moment, King Kong also came out of the cabin. King Kong, go in. We don't need you here. What a joke. King Kong had the strength of dozens of tons just by casually moving its arm, and it did not know how to control its strength. If he smashed the deck, he would lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in repair fees. Kill this guy first. Dawson could see that none of the animals here were ordinary. Moreover, all of them were extremely murderous. Once they made a move, it would be a life. Take that giant snake for example. It didn't look thick, but it had amazing strength. He bit his own hand and lifted it into the air. This bite force and strength were probably even stronger than pythons of the same length. And his lightning-like speed was something that pythons couldn't compare to. One of them secretly cast a curse at Chun Zhao, but when the curse reached Chun Zhao, it disappeared immediately. Boss, my curse is useless. Let me. Another person jumped out. His tone was very confident. He took a deep breath and breathed at Chun Zhao. A mouthful of poisonous mist surged toward Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao waved his hand. He wasn't afraid of poison, but could a glutton be poisoned? Chun Zhao was afraid of the guy's tone. Scram. Chun Zhao only punched. But the person who had spat out the poisonous mist had already exploded. Dawson's pupils constricted. He could vaguely see the shadow of a fist. If Chen Zhao released the shadow with all his strength, they would see hundreds of fist shadows. But Chen Zhao only punched once. It was like a single frame of film. The human eye couldn't capture more than 27 frames per second of a single image. For example, when watching a movie, if it was less than 27 frames per second, there would be stuttering. If it was more than 27 frames per second, there would be brain fatigue, because the brain couldn't process the image. Simply put, the brain couldn't keep up with the speed of the image. Therefore, the standard for modern movies was 27 frames per second. Chen Zhao's punch was much faster than 27 frames per second. It was also an instant, not a continuous image. It would be strange if these people could see it. Chen Zhao grinned. Oh no. Fei Lai said not to dirty the boat. Dawson was starting to doubt whether Chen Zhao was an enhancer. If he wasn't, then Chen Zhao's strength was a bit shocking. But if he wasn't, how did he make one of his companions explode from a distance? He couldn't remember how an enhancer could hurt someone from a distance. Could it be that he cultivated another element? If it was a witch, he would believe it. After all, witches always had a surplus of magic power. But if it was a wizard, his magic power would be used up after a few spells. What was the point of learning another element? He might as well practice the spell he was best at. The spell just now was really powerful. It made a person explode instantly, but he couldn't use it too often. Otherwise, he would have killed everyone on his side long ago. Go together, Dawson ordered. But he didn't go up himself. Instead, he had his subordinates go up. Chen Zhao suddenly raised his hand, and a person flew into the air. Everyone's attention was attracted by the person. They watched as he flew more than 10 meters in the air, and glided in a perfect parabola. Then Lao Guan jumped out of the sea. Accompanied by the person's scream, he died in the shark's mouth. Come, let's see who wants to be fed to the sharks next. Chen Zhao had a faint smile. From the beginning to the end, Chen Zhao had one hand in his pocket. Damn, nameless fog, go die. A cloud of fog enveloped Chen Zhao. He could feel that the nameless fog's magic seemed to be corrosive. Chen Zhao didn't feel anything. But he didn't want his boat to be contaminated. The mouth of gluttony opened and swallowed the fog. Chapter 1501. Another person charged over. Chen Zhao grabbed the person's head. Mist shot out of his palm and poured into the person's mouth. Then the person's mouth started to corrode. The person started to struggle and reach out for help. Chen Zhao saw that this wasn't going to work. It would be disgusting if he didn't beat the person up. He lifted the person's feet and threw them into the sea. At the same time, he ordered the 5 tiger generals to stay away from the corpse. Don't get sick from eating it. Even the seawater couldn't stop the corpse from rotting. Clearly, the nameless mist wasn't anything good. Seeing that Chen Zhao actually ignored the mist and even absorbed it. Then, he spat it into his companion's mouth. Everyone's expressions changed. Who's next to be fed to the sharks? No one wanted to go up anymore. Everyone looked at their boss, Dawson. Dawson could only bite the bullet and go up. Sir, actually, we came with good intentions. We didn't want to have a conflict with you. Your pet attacked us first. Dawson could only lie with his eyes wide open, even though he knew that basically no one would believe his words. Oh, Chen Zhao replied casually. If that's the case, can you go back to your yacht now? Dawson's heart skipped a beat. If it were him, he would definitely kill all of them with absolute power. But Chen Zhao didn't do that. Could it be that his magic power had reached the bottom? That's right. He'd killed so many people, and had to control so many animals, including the sharks in the sea. His magic power must have run out. Dawson looked at Chen Zhao calmly with a smile. But you killed so many of our people. I can't just do nothing, right? Chen Zhao suddenly moved. The next moment, he appeared before one of them. His 5 fingers pierced through the person's neck. Then, Chen Zhao lifted his arm and threw the person into the sea, attracting the sharks to fight for food. Look, I killed another one of your people. What do you want? Everyone bristled and backed away in fear. Dawson's expression changed. He also took 2 steps back subconsciously. Damn it. Chen Zhao had only used one hand from beginning to end. It wasn't that he didn't have any strength left. He hadn't used his full strength from beginning to end. Sir, I'm sorry for my attitude earlier. You're welcome. Smiling, Chen Zhao flung the blood off his hand. But since you're not willing to return to your ship, I don't think I need your ship anymore. Fist shadow. In an instant, Chen Zhao threw out 100 punches. Bang! Bang! Under the astonished and horrified gazes of Dawson and the others, their yacht was twisted and deformed before sinking into the water as scrap metal. Everyone broke out in a cold sweat. It was obvious that they had provoked someone they shouldn't have. As a guest of this ship, I've always been very tolerant. Now, do you want to be beaten up by me, or jump into the sea to feed the sharks? Tolerance. Is this what you call tolerance? Dawson gritted his teeth. There might still be a chance. He still had his thorny skin. Dawson charged at Chen Zhao and opened his arms. He wanted to use his thorny skin to counterattack. To be honest, Chen Zhao had already sensed Dawson's strangeness. Actually, Chen Zhao wanted to try Dawson's strange spell. But the point was that Dawson was a big, rough man. This made Chen Zhao's idea of trying disappear. Chen Zhao grabbed Dawson's shoulder and squeezed it tightly. Dawson immediately felt intense pain. He grabbed Chen Zhao's arm with all his might, trying to hurt Chen Zhao through his thorny skin like before. But this time, Chen Zhao didn't let go. The thorny skin couldn't be seen, but it was indeed there. Chen Zhao could feel invisible thorns piercing his skin. However, this invisible attack didn't do much damage to Chen Zhao. The first time was an accident, but as long as he was mentally prepared, Chen Zhao didn't even feel pain. Is it fun? Chen Zhao crushed Dawson's collarbone. Even with his thorny skin, rock body, strength multiplier, and beast frenzy, even though his body was several times stronger than a normal person's, Dawson was still as fragile as a piece of paper before Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao squeezed lightly and Dawson's shoulder exploded. Suddenly, the mouth of gluttony sensed an appetite. Was the mouth of gluttony interested in such a weak spiritualist? After all, the mouth of gluttony wasn't even interested in dragons. Chen Zhao didn't restrain the mouth of gluttony. It bit off Dawson's left shoulder. Dawson fell to the ground, moaning in pain. The mouth of gluttony was digesting Dawson's flesh. The mouth of gluttony wasn't interested in Dawson's magic power. Dawson's magic power was probably less than 1/10,000th of Chen Zhao's. Both quality and quantity were meaningless to Chen Zhao. What the mouth of gluttony was really interested in was Dawson's bloodline. Chen Zhao closed his eyes and felt the changes that came from his right arm, and then spread to his entire body. There were obvious changes, but Chen Zhao's overall strength didn't increase much. It seemed like his strength had increased by less than 1%. But his defense seemed to have increased quite a bit. Chen Zhao didn't expect such a useless person to be helpful to him. Soon Dawson didn't move anymore. After all, his entire shoulder had been bitten off by the mouth of gluttony. He'd already lost a lot of blood and died from his injuries. Demon! You demon! Chen Zhao chuckled and finally took his left hand out of his pocket. Chen Zhao raised his arms and controlled the seawater through the small world. The waves surged over the deck and the boat tilted. The remaining people were all thrown into the sea. Together with the bloodstains on the deck and Dawson's corpse, they all rushed into the sea. Help, help. I don't want to die. Soon the sea was dyed red with blood. 5 sharks were eating and strangling the people who had fallen into the water. Chen Zhao still had a smile on his face, as if nothing had happened. Just then another yacht came over. Chen Zhao looked at it. At the same time, he made the nearby seawater flow faster, so that the redness on the surface dissipated. A blonde woman in black tights stood at the bow of the yacht. When the yacht approached, she didn't jump onto the hydra. Instead she called out, "Sir, hello." "Hi, how can I help you?" Chen Zhao asked, looking up. "Sir, did you see a yacht? I mean a yacht that looks like it has a couple of not-so-friendly passengers." "Sorry, I didn't see it. Is it your friend?" Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1502. Really? Sorry to bother you. The blonde woman smiled softly and ordered the yacht to leave without making contact with the hydra. At this time, a rough man walked over from the blonde woman's side. His arms looked like he was wearing wool pants. and there was a devil pattern tattooed on them. Wuxia, we located Dawson's yacht. It's obviously in that sea area. That man is obviously suspicious. Why don't you expose him? The rough man said discontentedly. Anyone who can appear in this sea area is not an ordinary person. Wuxia smoothed her long blonde hair. There is no doubt that Dawson used some magic to hide the yacht. We don't know what the man has to do with Dawson. With our current strength, we are not sure if we can defeat Dawson, not to mention that there is a man with unknown strength. To be honest, that man gives me a very dangerous feeling. Wuxia held a small monitor with a very obvious point on it, which kept indicating the target's location. In the evening, Wuxia, is Dawson's boat still there? Well, according to the signal, Dawson's boat has been in the same place and has not moved. Should we go and take a look? The rough man asked. Wuxia hesitated slightly. She had fought with Dawson for 10 years, and she knew how cunning the man was. He was like a crocodile, lurking under the water surface, and then giving the enemy a fatal blow. Could it be a trap? Wuxia asked worriedly. We are not prey, the rough man said. Okay. Wuxia ordered to turn around and go back to the location of the signal source. The big yacht is gone. I didn't see Dawson's boat either. Strange, the signal is clearly here. Could it be that he has found the source of the signal? It's impossible to find it. That's the masterpiece of the High Witch. Although Dawson is cunning, he is not strong enough. Just then, a crew member ran over to Wuxia and the burly man. Miss Wuxia, Captain. Our ship's sonar detected a metal reaction more than 30 meters underwater. Metal reaction. Like a shipwreck. Sonar detection was a very common piece of equipment for sailing. The sonar instruments on general ships were mainly used to monitor the depth of the seabed. Through the feedback of sound waves, coupled with computer calculations, it was possible to accurately calculate the depth of the seabed, whether there were reefs, and so on. Moreover, sonar detection could also detect whether there were hidden resources in the deep sea. After the sonar was transmitted to the bottom of the sea or other objects, the feedback from different objects would be different. For example, metals or large creatures could be detected by sonar. This is Dawson's boat? Wuxia's expression changed. The burly man frowned. He discovered the mark on the ship, so he deliberately sank the ship? Send 2 divers down to check. Half an hour later, the diver came up to report. Miss Wank, Captain, we found a completely damaged yacht underwater. It's Dawson's yacht. The diver handed the camera to Wuxia. We found a body in the yacht. It's the captain of Dawson's yacht. There was no one else. The yacht must have been damaged in a very sudden situation, and it deformed and sank in a very short time. So the captain of the yacht didn't have time to escape. Wuxia and the captain looked at the image in the camera. Road, can you see what damaged the yacht? No, it doesn't look familiar. It was damaged by firearms, more like a big hammer. Look at these dents. But I can't imagine what kind of ship would be equipped with such a machine at sea. The attack was sudden, so it wasn't Dawson's doing. He didn't discover the mark on the yacht. They met an enemy other than us. But there were no other bodies on the yacht. Where are Dawson's men? Dawson has a lot of men, so there should be more bodies. Even if the yacht was washed away by the current, it's impossible that all the bodies can't be found. Rode was silent for a while. Unless there's one possibility. Dawson and his men weren't on the yacht when it was attacked. That is to say, Dawson and his men are still alive. Maybe, but it's more likely that they're dead, Rode said. Why? What's the evidence? I can't think of any machine or weapon that could damage such a huge yacht. So I'm leaning toward magic. Dawson messed with someone he shouldn't have messed with. That person or a group of people killed Dawson and his men in a rage and destroyed Dawson's yacht. Who could have done this? I don't know, Rode said. Everything is just speculation. Plus, there are too many spiritualists on Nightmare Island. There are even a few world-famous spiritualists. So I'm not sure if they did it. Could it be the man on the super yacht at noon? I don't think so. I've sensed that there were only 3 women on the yacht, and one of them had no magic power, and the other 2 were babies. But that man shouldn't be an ordinary person. You said you felt danger from him, right? Yes, It was a very dangerous feeling, but I don't think he could kill Dawson and his men alone. Captain, that yacht appeared behind us today. Appeared behind us? Are they ambushing us? No, they're sailing around Arma Island. They're very slow, and it looks like they're just having fun. Wenke, do you think we should get in touch with him? Rode asked hesitantly. We can try, but don't let him feel malicious. Send them a message. There are many reefs in this area. They replied, thank you, and invited us to their ship, the crew said. This was the rule of the sea. If a strange ship approached rashly, it was likely to cause a misunderstanding or trouble. Usually, they would communicate first and then make a judgment. If the other party felt that there was no danger, they would send an invitation. If the other party refused, then it was best not to approach. Otherwise, the other party might do something extreme. According to the convention of the sea, too close was considered dangerous. Chapter 1503. A while later, Wang Xig's boat approached. After receiving permission, Wang Xig and Captain Rode boarded the Hydra. Hello, we meet again. Chen Zhao stood up with a smile. Wang Xig and Rode looked at the 4 people on the deck. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai both had children in their arms. They'd also prepared a lot of food. It seemed to be enough for dozens of people. Hello, I'm Wang Xig. This is our captain, Rode a Spider. I'm Chen Zhao. This is the mother of my 2 children, Fei Lai. After getting to know each other, Chen Zhao said, aren't you going to call your crew over? I have plenty of food here. Of course, if you agree. Chen Zhao could tell that Wang Xig's group was not in the same group as Dawson's group that had come in the morning. As the hostess, Fei Lai was in charge of entertaining the friends she'd made at sea. Little Jerlin, on the other hand, ran here and there. I'm Little Jerlin. Hello. Hello. The crew members were all very friendly and greeted Jerlin warmly. Chen Zhao, Wang Xig, and Rode leaned against the railing and chatted. Mr. Chen, you're a spiritualist too, right? Obviously. Chen Zhao shrugged and did not deny it. So if I may ask, do you know Dawson? Oh, you mean the guys I fed to the sharks today? Dawson's dead? They'd thought of this possibility, but they'd thought that it wasn't likely. Now that Chen Zhao admitted it, they had no choice but to believe it. If you're his friends, I hope you can do it after the party. If you're not, I hope we can be friends. We're enemies with Dawson, not friends. Then what organization are you from? We're hunters. Dawson is our enemy. Are you hunters who specialize in fighting spiritualists? Or superheroes and villains like in movies? Neither. We only target Dawson and the organization behind him, because we have a feud. Their crimes are secondary. Then what's your function in theirs? Of course, if it's not convenient for you to answer, you don't have to say. We're not a secret organization. Our organization is still very famous. Our organization was founded in the early 18th century and has a history of 200 years. Our organization has a very famous hunter, Van Helsing. There are even movies about him. You should have heard of him, right? Oh, I've heard of it. The story of Van Helsing and Dracula. Chen Zhao had learned about Van Helsing's story from the movies. Chen Zhao knew about the Dracula family, but even Murphy and his mother didn't know if they really existed. To put it bluntly, the movie he had watched back then was the story of Van Helsing and Dracula's love-hate relationship. Actually, most of his stories are fabricated. Of course, it's true that he's a very powerful hunter. Hunters are a group, Wang Xig said. It's also a symbol of identity. We're like mercenaries, accepting employment in magic services. What about Dawson's organization? A group of criminals, villains, lunatics, cultists, and idiots. It's similar to the supervillains in the movies, just smaller in scale. How so? The biggest one they've ever planned was to control a governor. And then, they succeeded in controlling the governor. And then the governor stepped down after 16 days in office. This group of idiots thought that by directly controlling the highest power in a political system, they could steal the entire political system. Chen Zhao also felt that it was quite stupid. They really thought this was like in a movie. Evil organizations could control the president, and then control the entire country? Take America, for example. If the president released a few unreliable proposals, The House of Representatives and Senate would slap him in the face. His proposals wouldn't even be able to leave the White House. Unless the evil organization could control all the members of the House of Representatives and Senate, there was no use in controlling the president. Even if some evil organization could really control all the counselors, these counselors were supported by capitalists. These capitalists all had their own political demands. If these counselors were disobedient, the biggest possibility was that they would be sent home to farm or sent to political prison. Other times, they're no different from normal robbers or just a criminal organization, Wuxia said. Wuxia said, last time, they gathered a few people and tried to earn enough money in the Las Vegas casinos. In the end, one of their legs was broken after they won $500,000. Their collective funds, including medical fees, are more than $500,000. Chen Zhao found it strange. These guys look worse than normal criminals. Why do I feel like they're really stupid? It's just from a different perspective. Normal criminals will have all sorts of plans to commit crimes because they don't have any supernatural powers. However, these people think that they can do whatever they want with magic, so most of their actions are anticlimactic. However, there are still a few small gangs. They are not idiots, they are real criminals. They will not fantasize about wild plans, nor will they daydream about ruling the world. They will only do very practical things, such as murder and arson. There is nothing they would not do. You mean Dawson and the others? Dawson is just a small leader. He's indeed difficult to deal with. I've been chasing him for 10 years, but he escapes every time. There were idiots who got carried away after obtaining power. But of course, there were also clear-headed criminals. Criminals with supernatural powers and clear-headed were the most troublesome. Of course, Chen Zhao had met them in Los Angeles. He'd met both. But in Los Angeles, Chen Zhao could deal with all troubles and enemies. So the ratio of supernatural crimes in Los Angeles was very low. Wuxia said so much to Chen Zhao because she wanted him to join her organization or become a hunter. However, Chen Zhao wasn't interested. If someone appeared before Chen Zhao, he wouldn't need to be a hunter. He would take care of them easily. However, Chen Zhao wouldn't run around chasing crazy criminals with all sorts of magical spells all day. He wouldn't do something so strenuous and unrewarding. Please remember the original domain name of this book, 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version, that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.